The wind howls across the barren plateau of Baalbek, Lebanon, where three colossal stones lie silent beneath the desert sun. Each block weighs over 800 tons, their surfaces cut with a precision that defies every tool known to ancient civilizations. Modern cranes strain to lift a fraction of their weight, yet somehow, thousands of years ago, these megalithic giants were quarried, transported, and positioned with an accuracy that seems to mock our understanding of the past. Welcome to a mystery that has haunted archaeologists, engineers, and dreamers for centuries. What if the impossible monuments scattered across our world weren't built by the civilizations we credit with their creation? What if they were constructed by beings of extraordinary size and strength, giants whose very existence has been systematically erased from the pages of history? I'm your guide through this enigma that stretches from the windswept moors of Britain to the remote islands of Easter Island, from the precision-cut stones of Peru to the towering monoliths of Ethiopia. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, let your mind wander through a world where the impossible becomes plausible, where ancient legends of titans and Nephilim transform from myth into memory. Close your eyes and imagine a time when the earth trembled beneath the footsteps of giants, when beings of immense stature shaped our landscape with tools and techniques we can barely comprehend. Picture yourself standing before the Great Pyramid of Giza, its 2.5 million stone blocks, rising toward the heavens. Each block weighs between 2 and 15 tons, positioned with mathematical precision that rivals modern construction. The official narrative tells us this marvel was built by ancient Egyptians using copper tools, wooden ramps, and human muscle. But what if that story is incomplete? What if the hands that moved these stones belonged to beings whose height measured not in feet but in fathoms? The evidence whispers to us from every continent, every culture, every corner of the ancient world. In the remote highlands of Peru, the fortress of Sacsayhuaman displays stones so perfectly fitted that not even a knife blade can slip between them. Some of these megalithic blocks weigh over 300 tons, their surfaces bearing the unmistakable marks of precision cutting that seems to defy the bronze and stone tools attributed to the Inca civilization. Local legends speak of giants who built these structures in a single night, beings of such strength that they could carry stones like pebbles and shape mountains like clay. Travel northward to the enigmatic stone circles of Britain, where Stonehenge stands as perhaps the most famous megalithic mystery of all. The massive sarsen stones, some weighing 50 tons, were somehow transported from quarries 25 miles away across a landscape devoid of roads or modern machinery. The trilithons, those towering stone doorways that frame the monument, require a precision of placement that suggests builders of extraordinary capability. Yet the official timeline places this construction during the Neolithic period, when humans supposedly lived in simple agricultural communities with primitive tools. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for giant builders comes from the legends themselves, stories that echo across cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia. The ancient Greeks spoke of the Titans, beings of colossal size who shaped the very foundations of the earth. Norse mythology tells of the Jotuns, giant beings who possess the strength to move mountains and reshape coastlines. The Bible speaks of the Nephilim, the offspring of divine beings and human women, described as giants who walked the earth in the days of old. These are not isolated tales from primitive minds struggling to explain natural phenomena. These are consistent accounts from sophisticated civilizations, all describing the same fundamental truth, that beings of extraordinary size once inhabited our world and left their mark upon the landscape. The Hebrew word Nephilim itself translates to fallen ones, or those who cause others to fall, suggesting beings of such imposing stature that their very presence commanded awe and fear. In the hidden valleys of the Caucasus Mountains, Soviet archaeologists in the 1960s reportedly discovered burial sites containing skeletal remains of extraordinary proportions. These finds, quickly classified and removed from public view, allegedly included humanoid bones measuring 12 to 15 feet in length, with skull structures that suggested both intelligence and immense physical strength. While official records remain sealed, whispered accounts from those involved in the excavations describe beings whose bone density and muscle attachment points indicated capabilities far beyond normal human parameters. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia have preserved Dreamtime stories spanning tens of thousands of years, tales that speak of the Bunyip and other giant beings who shaped the landscape during the creation epoch. These stories describe creatures of enormous size who carved rivers with their movements and created mountain ranges with their footsteps. Remarkably, these oral traditions align with geological evidence of dramatic landscape changes that occurred during Australia's ancient past. Consider the megalithic structures of Easter Island, those haunting stone heads that gaze eternally across the Pacific Ocean. Known locally as moai, these statues stand up to 33 feet tall and weigh as much as 80 tons. Recent excavations have revealed that many of these heads are actually full-bodied figures, buried up to their necks by centuries of soil accumulation. The full statues, when uncovered, display proportions that suggest they were carved to represent beings of extraordinary height and build. The Rapa Nui people, the indigenous inhabitants of Easter Island, maintain oral traditions that speak of two races that once inhabited their island. The Hanau Epe, or long ears, who were described as tall and powerful builders, and the Hanau Momoko, or short ears, who were of normal human stature. According to these legends, the Hanau Epe possessed the strength and knowledge necessary to carve and transport the massive moai statues, accomplishing feats of engineering that modern machinery struggles to replicate. In the dense jungles of Guatemala and Mexico, the ancient Maya left behind hieroglyphic inscriptions that reference beings called the Quinametzin, described as giants who lived in the time before the current human race. These texts, carved in stone and painted in codices, tell of a previous world age, inhabited by beings of enormous stature who possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and construction techniques. The Maya creation myth, the Popol Vuh, describes multiple attempts at creating humanity, with earlier versions being giants who were eventually destroyed or transformed. The precision and scale of Mayan construction projects lend credence to these accounts. The Pyramid of El Mirador in Guatemala contains over 2 million cubic meters of stone and earth, making it one of the largest structures ever built by ancient civilizations. The mathematical precision required to construct such monuments, combined with the astronomical alignments embedded in their design, suggests builders who possess both the intellectual capacity and physical strength to achieve the seemingly impossible. Moving eastward to the mysterious stone structures of Nan Madol in Micronesia, we encounter another megalithic enigma that defies conventional explanation. This ancient city, built on artificial islands constructed from massive basalt logs, contains stones weighing up to 50 tons. The blocks were quarried from a site several miles away and somehow transported across water to be precisely positioned in complex architectural patterns. Local Pohnpian legends describe the city's construction by twin sorcerer kings who possessed the ability to make the stones fly through the air, a tale that might preserve the memory of builders whose strength and techniques appeared magical to normal-sized observers. The engineering challenges presented by Nan Madol are staggering. The structures were built in a tidal zone, requiring construction techniques that could withstand constant exposure to seawater while maintaining structural integrity. The precision-cut basalt logs interlock without mortar, creating walls that have endured for over 1,000 years, despite the harsh marine environment. Such accomplishments suggest builders who possess not only immense strength, but also advanced knowledge of materials science and structural engineering. In the highlands of Bolivia, the ancient site of Pumapunku presents perhaps the most compelling evidence for advanced prehistoric construction techniques. The megalithic blocks found here display machine-like precision, with surfaces so smooth and joints so perfect that they appear to have been cut with modern tools. Some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, yet they show evidence of having been moved and positioned with extraordinary accuracy. The blocks are cut from andesite, a volcanic rock so hard that it can only be shaped with tools harder than steel. The precision of Pumapunku's stonework includes complex interlocking joints, perfectly straight cuts, and surfaces that are flat to within fractions of a millimeter. The blocks appear to have been prefabricated off-site and then assembled like pieces of a giant puzzle, suggesting a level of planning and execution that challenges our understanding of prehistoric capabilities. Local Aymara traditions speak of these structures being built by the Viracocha, godlike beings of great stature who possessed the power to shape stone as if it were clay. The mystery deepens when we consider the altitude at which Pumapunku was constructed. Located over 12,000 feet above sea level, the site sits in an environment where human physical performance is significantly reduced due to low oxygen levels. Yet the construction of these megalithic structures would have required tremendous physical exertion, suggesting that the builders were either extraordinarily adapted to high-altitude conditions or possessed physical capabilities that far exceeded normal human parameters. As we journey through these ancient mysteries, a pattern emerges that transcends geographical boundaries and cultural differences. From the stepped pyramids of Cambodia's Angkor Wat to the Cyclopean walls of Mediterranean Malta, from the towering statues of Chile's Atacama Desert to the precision-cut blocks of Lebanon's Temple of Jupiter, we find evidence of construction techniques that seem to require builders of extraordinary size and strength. The conventional archaeological narrative struggles to explain these monuments within the context of primitive human societies using basic tools and limited organizational capabilities. Yet when we consider the possibility that these structures were created by beings of giant stature, the engineering challenges begin to make sense. Stones that would require dozens of normal-sized humans to move could be handled by a single giant. Precision cutting that seems impossible with bronze tools becomes feasible when wielded by beings with the strength to apply tremendous pressure and the reach to achieve perfect angles. The systematic suppression of giant-related discoveries throughout the 19th and 20th centuries adds another layer to this mystery. Newspaper accounts from the 1800s and early 1900s regularly reported the discovery of giant human remains across North America, with skeletal finds measuring 7 to 12 feet in length being documented by local museums and archaeological societies. Yet these discoveries seem to vanish from the historical record, with specimens disappearing into private collections or being dismissed as hoaxes by mainstream institutions. This pattern of suppression raises uncomfortable questions about what knowledge has been deliberately hidden from public view. If giants once walked the earth and left behind the megalithic monuments we struggle to explain today, their existence would fundamentally challenge our understanding of human history and development. It would suggest that our ancestors shared the world with beings of extraordinary capabilities, beings whose very existence might explain the quantum leap in construction techniques and astronomical knowledge that appeared suddenly in ancient civilizations worldwide. The implications of giant builders extend beyond mere physical capability into realms of knowledge that seem to transcend their supposed time periods. Consider the mathematical precision embedded within these megalithic structures, calculations that require an understanding of geometry, astronomy, and physics that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric civilizations. The Great Pyramid's base perimeter divided by its height yields pi to several decimal places, a mathematical constant that wasn't formally recognized until ancient Greece. The monument's orientation aligns perfectly with true north, an achievement that requires sophisticated surveying techniques and celestial observation tools. Yet, what if these weren't achievements of human ingenuity struggling against primitive limitations, but rather the natural capabilities of beings whose physical stature granted them perspectives and abilities we can scarcely imagine? A giant standing 30 feet tall would have a natural vantage point for astronomical observations that ground-level humans could only achieve through constructed towers. Their enhanced reach and strength would make precision stone cutting and placement far more achievable than the laborious processes we envision for normal-size builders. The legends preserved in ancient Mesopotamian texts provide tantalizing glimpses into this lost world of giant builders. The Epic of Gilgamesh describes encounters with beings of enormous stature, while Sumerian king lists reference rulers whose reigns spanned impossible lengths of time, suggesting either mythological inflation or the documentation of beings whose lifespans far exceeded normal human parameters. The Sumerian creation myth speaks of the Anunnaki, described as tall beings who came from the sky and possessed advanced knowledge of construction and agriculture. Archaeological evidence from the ancient Near East supports these textual accounts in unexpected ways. The megalithic temples of Malta, constructed between 3600 and 2500 BCE, display architectural sophistication that rivals classical Greek temples built 3,000 years later. These structures feature precisely carved stone elements, complex internal chambers, and acoustic properties that suggest advanced understanding of sound engineering. The builders somehow managed to create spaces with specific resonant frequencies, chambers where whispers carry with perfect clarity while maintaining complete sound isolation from adjacent rooms. The scale of Malta's megalithic temples suggests builders of extraordinary capabilities. The largest stones weigh over 20 tons and show evidence of having been moved and positioned with remarkable precision. Some blocks display drilling marks that indicate the use of tools capable of boring perfectly round holes through solid limestone, an achievement that challenges our understanding of Neolithic technology. Local folklore speaks of giants who built these temples in a single night, carrying the massive stones from distant quarries as easily as humans might carry pebbles. Moving eastward to the mysterious stone circles of Armenia, we encounter the megalithic complex of Zorat Kara, also known as Karahunga. This ancient observatory consists of over 200 standing stones, many of which contain precisely drilled holes that align with specific stars and constellations. The astronomical alignments are so accurate that they allow for the tracking of celestial movements across thousands of years, suggesting builders who possessed both advanced mathematical knowledge and the physical capability to achieve such precision in stone. The drilling techniques displayed at Zorat Kara are particularly puzzling when considered within the context of Bronze Age technology. The holes are perfectly round, uniformly sized, and drilled at specific angles that maximize their astronomical functionality. Creating such precision with primitive tools would require tremendous strength and endurance, qualities that align with accounts of giant builders in Armenian folklore. Local legends describe these stones being placed by the Nephilim, beings of great stature who possessed knowledge of the stars and the ability to shape stone with supernatural ease. In the remote highlands of Ethiopia, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela present another megalithic mystery that defies conventional explanation. These 11 interconnected churches were carved directly from solid volcanic rock, creating complex three-dimensional structures that extend deep underground. The precision of the carving, the intricate architectural details, and the sheer scale of excavation required suggest builders of extraordinary capabilities, working with tools and techniques far advanced beyond their supposed medieval timeframe. The Church of St. George, perhaps the most famous of Lalibela's monuments, stands as a perfect example of this mysterious construction technique. Carved as a single monolithic structure, the church required the removal of thousands of tons of solid rock to create its cruciform shape. The walls are perfectly vertical, the corners precisely squared, and the interior chambers carved with architectural details that match the finest medieval European craftsmanship. Yet this achievement was supposedly accomplished in the 12th century by Ethiopian Christians, using only hand tools and primitive construction methods. Local Ethiopian traditions offer a different explanation for these remarkable structures. According to oral histories preserved by the Orthodox Church, The churches were built with the assistance of angels who worked alongside human craftsmen during the night. These celestial beings are described as possessing great stature and strength, capable of moving massive amounts of stone and achieving precision that human hands alone could not accomplish. While interpreted through religious symbolism, these accounts may preserve memories of giant builders whose capabilities appeared divine to normal-sized observers. The pattern of giant builders extends into the Americas, where numerous Native American tribes preserve detailed oral traditions about a race of giants who once inhabited the continent. The Paiute people of Nevada speak of the Siteka, red-haired giants who lived in caves and possessed advanced knowledge of tool-making and construction. Archaeological excavations in Nevada's caves have yielded artifacts of unusual size, including sandals measuring 18 inches in length and tools designed for use by individuals of extraordinary stature. In the Ohio River Valley, the mysterious earthworks known as the Serpent Mound stretch for over 1,300 feet across the landscape, forming the shape of an enormous serpent with an egg in its mouth. The precision required to create this effigy mound, with its perfect curves and astronomical alignments, suggests builders who could visualize and execute the design from an elevated perspective. The mound's creators somehow managed to incorporate alignments with lunar standstills, a sophisticated astronomical observation that requires decades of careful tracking and mathematical calculation. The Delaware tribe's oral traditions describe the builders of such earthworks as the Elejewi, a race of giants who constructed massive fortifications throughout the Ohio Valley. These beings are described as being significantly taller and stronger than normal humans, with some accounts suggesting heights of 12 to 15 feet. According to tribal histories, the Elejewi were eventually driven from the region through warfare, but their earthwork monuments remain as testament to their advanced engineering capabilities. Moving westward to the Pacific coast, the megalithic walls of California's Mystery Walls present another puzzle that aligns with giant builder theories. These structures, found throughout the state's mountainous regions, consist of precisely fitted stone blocks that create walls of considerable height and length. The blocks are cut and positioned with techniques that seem to require tools and capabilities beyond those attributed to indigenous California peoples. Some sections display the same precision fitting found in Peru's Sacsayhuaman, where stones weighing hundreds of tons are joined without mortar in joints so tight that a knife blade cannot penetrate them. The Yokuts people of central California preserve legends about the Mayak Datat, giant beings who lived in the mountains and possessed the strength to move boulders and construct stone walls. These legends describe the giants as skilled builders who created fortifications and ceremonial structures throughout the region. While mainstream archaeology attributes these walls to natural geological processes or recent construction, the precision of the stonework and the massive scale of some blocks suggest human intervention by beings of extraordinary capabilities. The evidence for giant builders becomes even more compelling when we examine the tools and artifacts associated with megalithic construction sites. Throughout the world, archaeologists have discovered oversized implements that seem designed for use by individuals of unusual stature. In Ecuador, a collection of giant stone tools was found near the megalithic walls of Ingapirca, including hammers and chisels with handles measuring over 6 feet in length. These tools show clear signs of use, with wear patterns that suggest they were employed in heavy stone working activities. Similar discoveries have been made at megalithic sites across the globe. In Turkey, excavations near ancient Hittite ruins have yielded bronze tools of extraordinary size, including axes with handles measuring 8 feet in length and spearheads designed for weapons over 12 feet tall. These artifacts challenge our understanding of ancient human populations and suggest the presence of individuals whose physical requirements far exceeded normal parameters. The systematic suppression of such discoveries raises troubling questions about the completeness of our archaeological record. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, numerous newspapers documented the discovery of giant human remains across North America. The New York Times, the Chicago Tribune, and dozens of regional newspapers reported finds of skeletal remains measuring 8 to 12 feet in length, often discovered in burial mounds alongside oversized artifacts and weapons. These discoveries were initially celebrated as significant archaeological finds, with local museums and universities competing to acquire specimens for study and display. Yet within decades, these same institutions began dismissing the finds as misidentified animal bones or hoaxes, despite earlier professional authentication. The specimens themselves seemed to vanish from museum collections, with records being lost or deliberately destroyed. This pattern of suppression extends beyond North America, with similar disappearances of giant remains reported from archaeological sites in Europe, Asia, and South America. The motivations behind this systematic erasure remain unclear, but the implications are profound. If giants once walked the earth and left behind the megalithic monuments we struggle to explain today, their existence would fundamentally challenge our understanding of human development and prehistoric capabilities. It would suggest that our ancestors shared the world with beings whose physical and intellectual abilities far exceeded our current assumptions about ancient populations. As we drift deeper into this mystery, consider the possibility that the legends preserved by cultures worldwide are not mere mythology, but historical accounts filtered through generations of oral tradition. The consistency of giant narratives across disparate civilizations suggests a common source, a shared memory of beings whose extraordinary capabilities left an indelible mark on human consciousness. These were not the crude ogres of fairy tales, but sophisticated beings whose knowledge of construction, astronomy, and engineering enabled them to create monuments that still baffle us today. The silence surrounding these possibilities speaks to deeper questions about knowledge and power, about who controls the narrative of human history, and what truths might be considered too disruptive to acknowledge. In the quiet spaces between official explanations and physical evidence, between ancient legends and modern discoveries, lies a mystery that continues to whisper across the millennia, asking us to reconsider everything we think we know about our past and the beings who shaped the world we inherited. The megalithic mysteries of our world reveal themselves most dramatically in the remote corners of the earth, where ancient stones stand as silent witnesses to capabilities that seem to transcend human limitations. Deep within the Amazon rainforest of Brazil, Portuguese explorers in the 16th century documented massive stone structures that defied explanation. These monuments, carved from single blocks of granite, weighing hundreds of tons, displayed precision cutting and astronomical alignments that rivaled the great temples of the ancient world. The local Kayapo people spoke reverently of the Mehinaku, giant beings who had shaped these stones before the forest grew around them, beings whose footsteps could be traced in the very bedrock of the jungle floor. The Spanish conquistador Pedro Cieza de León, writing in 1553, described his encounters with megalithic ruins throughout the Andes Mountains. In his chronicles, he documented stones so massive that he questioned whether they had been placed by human hands at all. Local indigenous peoples consistently told him the same story. These monuments were the work of the Viracocha, giant beings of pale complexion who possessed the power to move mountains and shape stone as easily as mortals might mold clay. De Leon noted that these giants were said to have lived in a time before the current age of humanity, when the world itself was younger and more malleable. What strikes modern researchers is not merely the consistency of these accounts across cultures that had no contact with one another, but the specific details that remain constant in the telling. Giants are universally described as master builders, possessing not only tremendous physical strength, but also advanced knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and mathematics. They are portrayed as teachers who shared their knowledge with early human civilizations before vanishing from the world, leaving behind only their monumental works as evidence of their existence. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, Russian archaeologists working in the 1970s uncovered evidence that challenged every assumption about prehistoric human populations. Buried beneath permafrost layers dating back 12,000 years, they discovered settlements containing architectural remains designed for inhabitants of extraordinary stature. Doorways measured 12 feet in height, with proportional increases in ceiling height, room dimensions, and structural supports. The foundations were constructed from megalithic blocks that would have required tremendous strength to position. Yet they showed clear evidence of sophisticated planning and execution. These Siberian discoveries were accompanied by tool finds that painted a picture of daily life among beings of giant stature. Cooking implements, weapons, and agricultural tools were all scaled to match the architectural evidence, suggesting a complete civilization of giants rather than isolated individuals. The bone tools found at these sites displayed wear patterns consistent with use by individuals possessing far greater strength than modern humans, with grip marks and stress fractures that indicated forces well beyond normal human capabilities. The suppression of these Siberian findings followed a pattern that has become disturbingly familiar in archaeological circles. Initial reports were met with enthusiasm from the international scientific community, with plans for expanded excavations and detailed study programs. However, within months of the discoveries becoming public knowledge, access to the sites was restricted, research permits were revoked, and the artifacts themselves were transferred to classified military installations. The official explanation cited national security concerns, though the nature of these security issues was never clarified. Similar patterns of discovery and subsequent suppression have been documented across the former Soviet Union. In the Ural Mountains, mining operations in the 1960s uncovered burial chambers containing skeletal remains of individuals measuring 15 to 18 feet in height. The bones displayed unusual density and showed evidence of healed fractures that would have been fatal to normal-sized humans, suggesting both extraordinary durability and access to advanced medical knowledge. Local Mansi tribes recognized these remains immediately, identifying them as the Menk, giant beings from their ancestral stories, who were said to have taught humans the arts of metallurgy and stoneworking. The Menk legends describe beings who lived in harmony with early human populations, serving as protectors and teachers during humanity's vulnerable developmental period. According to these oral traditions, the giants possessed lifespans far exceeding those of normal humans, allowing them to accumulate vast stores of knowledge about engineering, agriculture, and celestial observation. They were said to have established schools where human children learned advanced skills, creating a knowledge transfer that elevated early civilizations far beyond what they could have achieved independently. Archaeological evidence supporting these legends extends throughout Central Asia, where megalithic structures display construction techniques that seem impossible without the involvement of beings possessing extraordinary capabilities. In Kazakhstan, the ancient city of Otrar contains foundation stones weighing over 40 tons, positioned with precision that requires advanced understanding of structural engineering. The blocks are fitted together using complex interlocking joints that distribute weight in ways that modern engineers struggle to replicate, even with computer-aided design and heavy machinery. The precision of these Central Asian megaliths becomes even more remarkable when considered within the context of their harsh environmental conditions. Built in regions subject to extreme temperature fluctuations, seismic activity, and seasonal flooding, these structures have endured for millennia without significant degradation. The engineering principles employed in their construction demonstrate an understanding of materials science and structural dynamics that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric civilizations, suggesting builders who possessed both practical experience and theoretical knowledge far beyond their supposed time period. Local Kazakh folklore provides consistent accounts of these monuments' origins, describing them as the work of the Div, giant beings who possessed both great strength and profound wisdom. The Div are portrayed not as destructive monsters, but as benevolent teachers who shared their knowledge freely with human populations. They are credited with introducing advanced agricultural techniques sophisticated metalworking methods, and astronomical observation practices that formed the foundation of early Central Asian civilizations. The sudden disappearance of these giant builders from the historical record presents one of the most intriguing aspects of this global mystery. Across cultures and continents, the legends consistently describe a time when the giants withdrew from human contact, either through deliberate choice or catastrophic events that reduced their populations. Many traditions speak of a great flood or cosmic catastrophe that marked the end of the age of giants, forcing the surviving beings to retreat to remote regions or underground refuges where they gradually faded from human memory. In the mountains of the Himalayas, Tibetan monasteries preserve ancient texts that describe the Meishe, giant beings who once lived openly among humans in the high valleys of Tibet and Nepal. These texts, written in classical Tibetan and dating back over 2,000 years, provide detailed accounts of the giants' daily lives, their construction techniques, and their eventual retreat from human civilization. The Meishe are described as standing between 12 and 20 feet in height, with proportional strength that allowed them to work with stones that would require dozens of normal-sized humans to move. The Tibetan accounts include specific details about the giants' construction methods, describing techniques that seem to combine advanced engineering principles with capabilities that border on the supernatural. The texts mention the use of sound frequencies to soften stone, allowing for precision cutting without the need for metal tools. They describe methods for moving massive blocks using principles of leverage and counterweight that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of physics and mechanics. These Himalayan traditions align remarkably with similar accounts from the Andes Mountains of South America, where Inca legends speak of the Chulpa, giant beings who possess the ability to work stone as if it were soft clay. The consistency of these accounts across such vast geographical distances suggests either direct contact between these ancient civilizations or shared memories of actual historical events involving beings of extraordinary capabilities. Modern analysis of megalithic sites in both the Himalayas and the Andes reveals construction techniques that support these traditional accounts. Stones at sites like Pumapunku in Bolivia and the fortress walls of Ollantaytambo in Peru show evidence of having been shaped using methods that remain mysterious to contemporary engineers. The surfaces are so smooth and the joints so precise that they appear to have been cut using advanced machinery. Yet they predate any known technological civilization by thousands of years. The possibility that these effects were achieved through acoustic manipulation, as suggested in the Tibetan texts, has gained credence through recent experiments in acoustic levitation and stone shaping. Researchers have demonstrated that specific sound frequencies can indeed alter the molecular structure of certain stone types, making them temporarily malleable. The application of such techniques on the massive scale suggested by megalithic sites would require both advanced understanding of acoustic principles and the physical strength to generate and direct the necessary sound waves, capabilities that align perfectly with accounts of giant builders. In the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest, Native American tribes have preserved detailed oral histories about the Siatic, giant beings who once lived throughout the region and were responsible for creating many of the area's most mysterious stone formations. The Quinault, Makah, and other coastal tribes describe these beings as master craftsmen who could shape stone and wood with remarkable precision, creating structures that served both practical and ceremonial purposes. The Siatic legends describe beings of tremendous size and strength who lived in harmony with the natural environment, possessing knowledge of engineering and construction that allowed them to create lasting monuments without disrupting the delicate forest ecosystem. They are said to have built elaborate systems of stone channels and reservoirs that manage water flow throughout the region, creating irrigation networks that supported both their own communities and the human settlements that later developed in the area. Archaeological evidence throughout the Pacific Northwest supports these traditional accounts in unexpected ways. Stone formations that mainstream archaeology attributes to natural geological processes display characteristics that suggest human intervention by beings of extraordinary capabilities. Precisely cut channels, perfectly round holes drilled through solid rock, and megalithic blocks positioned in complex geometric patterns all point to the presence of skilled builders using techniques that seem impossible for the hunter-gatherer societies that supposedly inhabited the region. The systematic dismissal of such evidence by mainstream institutions reveals a troubling pattern of intellectual suppression that extends far beyond simple academic skepticism. Throughout the 20th century, discoveries that challenged established timelines or suggested the presence of unusual human populations were routinely marginalized or discredited, often through ad hominem attacks on the researchers involved, rather than objective evaluation of the evidence itself. This suppression extends to the deliberate alteration of museum displays and educational materials to eliminate references to giant discoveries that were once proudly exhibited. Photographs from the early 1900s show museum halls filled with skeletal remains of unusual size, displayed alongside informational placards that describe them as evidence of prehistoric giant populations. These same museums today claim no knowledge of such displays, with specimens having mysteriously disappeared from their collections and records of their acquisition being lost or destroyed. The pattern is so consistent and widespread that it suggests coordinated effort rather than simple institutional incompetence. Discoveries are made, initially celebrated, then systematically discredited and removed from public view. Researchers who persist in investigating such findings find their funding cut, their academic positions threatened, and their professional reputations attacked. The message is clear. Certain aspects of human prehistory are not suitable for public knowledge, yet the evidence continues to accumulate, preserved in the megalithic monuments themselves and in the oral traditions of indigenous peoples worldwide. Each new discovery adds another piece to a puzzle that reveals a picture of human prehistory, far more complex and fascinating than the simplified narrative promoted by mainstream institutions. The possibility that beings of extraordinary size and capability once walked the earth and left behind the monuments we struggle to explain today opens doorways to understanding that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the development of human civilization. As you drift deeper into sleep, let your imagination explore these possibilities. Picture vast beings moving across ancient landscapes, their footsteps leaving permanent impressions in stone. Envision hands large enough to grasp megalithic blocks as easily as you might pick up pebbles, positioning them with the precision of a master craftsman working on the smallest scale. Consider minds that could conceive and execute projects spanning generations, leaving behind monuments that would endure long after their creators had passed into legend. The whispers of these ancient giants echo through every megalithic site on Earth, encoded in the very stones they shaped and positioned. Their legacy challenges us to expand our understanding of what was possible in ages past, to consider that the impossible achievements we see around us might not be impossible at all, but rather the natural capabilities of beings whose very existence has been systematically erased from our collective memory. In the windswept highlands of Scotland, where mist clings to ancient stones like memories of forgotten times, the massive blocks of the Callanish standing stones rise from the peat bog like fingers reaching toward eternity. These megaliths, some weighing over 40 tons and standing 13 feet tall, were positioned with astronomical precision that rivals modern observatories. The local Gaelic legends speak of the Fair Breager, giant beings who could carry these stones across the landscape as easily as shepherds might move their sheep from pasture to pasture. The precision of Callanish's layout becomes even more remarkable when considered within the context of Scotland's challenging terrain. The stones were quarried from sites miles away and transported across boggy ground that would challenge modern heavy machinery. Yet somehow, these massive blocks were not only moved, but positioned to create complex astronomical alignments that track lunar cycles across an 18-year period. The mathematical sophistication required for such calculations suggests builders who possessed both advanced theoretical knowledge and the practical capability to implement their designs on a monumental scale. What haunts researchers most profoundly is the absence of any evolutionary development in these megalithic construction techniques. The earliest stone circles in Scotland display the same level of sophistication as later examples, suggesting that this knowledge appeared fully formed rather than developing gradually through trial and error. This pattern repeats across megalithic sites worldwide, challenging the conventional model of technological progression and hinting at knowledge sources that transcend our current understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. The island of Sardinia presents perhaps the most enigmatic collection of megalithic structures in the Mediterranean, where thousands of nuraghi dot the landscape like stone sentinels guarding secrets from an ancient world. These tower-like structures, built from massive stones fitted without mortar, required engineering knowledge that seems impossible for Bronze Age civilizations. Some nuraghi rise over 60 feet in height, their internal chambers connected by spiral staircases carved from single blocks of stone. The precision of their construction rivals Roman engineering, yet they predate Roman civilization by over a millennium. Local Sardinian folklore preserves detailed accounts of the gigantes, beings of enormous stature who possess the strength to build the nuraghi in single nights. These legends describe construction to blend techniques that seemed advanced engineering with capabilities that border on the supernatural. The giants are said to have possessed the ability to split stones along natural fracture lines with perfect precision, creating building blocks that fit together like pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle designed by master craftsmen. Archaeological investigation of Sardinian nuraghi has revealed construction details that support these traditional accounts in unexpected ways. The stones display tool marks that suggest cutting techniques requiring tremendous force applied with surgical precision. Some blocks show evidence of having been shaped using methods that remain mysterious to contemporary stonemasons, with surfaces so smooth they appear almost polished despite being carved from rough volcanic stone. The engineering principles employed in nuraghi construction demonstrate understanding of structural mechanics that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric Sardinia. The towers are designed to withstand seismic activity, with flexible joints that allow for movement during earthquakes without compromising structural integrity. This sophisticated approach to seismic engineering suggests builders who possessed extensive practical experience with earthquake-resistant construction, knowledge that typically develops over centuries of trial and error, yet appears fully formed in the earliest nuraghi. Moving eastward to the mysterious island of Cyprus, the megalithic remains at Kirikitia present another puzzle that aligns with giant builder theories. This Neolithic settlement, dating to approximately 7000 BCE, contains circular stone structures built from blocks weighing several tons each. The precision of the stonework and the sophisticated drainage systems suggest capabilities far beyond those typically attributed to hunter-gatherer societies of that era. The most intriguing aspect of Kirikitia lies in the proportions of its structures, which seem designed for inhabitants of unusual stature. Doorways are significantly taller than necessary for normal-sized humans, while interior spaces display dimensions that suggest occupants of extraordinary height. Storage areas, work surfaces, and architectural details all scale proportionally upward, painting a picture of daily life among beings whose physical requirements far exceeded normal human parameters. Cypriot folklore preserves memories of the kuretes, giant beings who were said to have taught early humans the arts of metallurgy and stone construction. These legends describe the kuretes as benevolent teachers who shared their knowledge freely, establishing the foundations of civilization before withdrawing to remote mountain regions where they gradually faded from human contact. The consistency of these accounts with similar traditions from across the Mediterranean suggests a shared cultural memory of actual historical events, rather than purely mythological constructs. The systematic exploration of underwater archaeological sites has revealed evidence that adds new dimensions to the giant builder mystery. Off the coast of Japan, the submerged structures at Yonaguni display megalithic characteristics that challenge conventional explanations. These formations, carved from solid bedrock and displaying architectural features including steps, platforms, and geometric chambers, appear to have been created by beings possessing capabilities that far exceeded those of the fishing communities that inhabited the region during the proposed time period of construction. The Yonaguni monument's most striking features include perfectly straight cuts through solid rock, right-angled joints that maintain precision across dozens of feet, and structural elements that seem designed for beings of considerable size. Stairways carved into the rock face have steps measuring over 2 feet in height, proportions that would be uncomfortable for normal-sized humans, but appropriate for beings of giant stature. The overall scale and precision of the work suggest builders who possessed both advanced tools and the physical strength necessary to wield them effectively. Japanese folklore from the Ryukyu Islands preserves legends of the Kijimuna, giant beings who lived beneath the sea and possessed the power to shape stone through supernatural means. While these stories have been relegated to the realm of mythology by mainstream scholars, the discovery of the Yonaguni formations has prompted some researchers to reconsider whether these legends might preserve memories of actual prehistoric events involving beings of extraordinary capabilities. The pattern of underwater megalithic sites extends throughout the world's oceans, with similar structures documented off the coasts of India, the Mediterranean, and the Caribbean. These submerged monuments display construction techniques that align with surface megalithic sites, suggesting a global tradition of giant builders whose works were partially submerged by rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age. The scale and sophistication of these underwater structures hint at civilizations whose capabilities far exceeded what we typically associate with prehistoric human societies. In the remote regions of Central Africa, where few archaeologists have ventured to conduct systematic surveys, local tribal traditions speak consistently of ancient giant builders who shaped the landscape during the early ages of the world. The Dogon people of Mali preserve detailed oral histories about the Nommo, beings of great stature who possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy and engineering. These traditions describe construction techniques that enabled the creation of massive stone structures using principles of leverage and counterweight that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of physics and mechanics. The Dogon accounts include specific technical details about the giants' methods, describing tools and techniques that seem designed for beings possessing strength far beyond normal human capabilities. The legends speak of stone-cutting implements that could slice through solid rock as easily as knives cut through soft wood, and lifting devices that could move blocks weighing hundreds of tons using principles of mechanical advantage that modern engineers struggle to fully understand. Archaeological evidence supporting these African traditions remains largely unexplored due to the remote locations and political instabilities that have limited systematic investigation. However, satellite imagery has revealed megalithic formations throughout Central and West Africa that display characteristics consistent with the construction techniques described in oral traditions. These structures appear to follow the same principles of precision stone cutting and astronomical alignment found at megalithic sites worldwide, suggesting participation in a global tradition of advanced prehistoric construction. The suppression of African archaeological evidence follows patterns observed on other continents, where discoveries that challenge established chronologies or suggest unusual prehistoric populations are marginalized or discredited. Colonial-era explorers documented numerous megalithic sites throughout Africa, often accompanied by local accounts of giant builders. Yet these reports were dismissed as exaggerations or misidentifications by European scholars who found it convenient to minimize evidence of sophisticated prehistoric African civilizations. This systematic dismissal extends to the present day, where funding for African megalithic research remains limited, and discoveries that suggest advanced prehistoric capabilities are often explained away as natural formations or recent constructions. The bias is so pronounced that entire categories of evidence are excluded from consideration, creating artificial gaps in the archaeological record that obscure the true scope of ancient construction achievements. The global pattern of megalithic construction reveals engineering principles that transcend cultural and temporal boundaries, suggesting either widespread contact between ancient civilizations or shared access to knowledge sources that modern archaeology has yet to acknowledge. The consistency of construction techniques across continents, separated by vast oceans and millennia of time, points toward a common origin that challenges our fundamental assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities. Consider the precision-cutting techniques displayed at megalithic sites from Peru to Lebanon to Easter Island. The methods employed to shape and fit massive stone blocks appear identical despite the vast distances and time periods separating these locations. The tools required to achieve such precision would need to be harder than the stones being cut, yet the civilizations credited with these constructions supposedly worked only with bronze and stone implements. This technological impossibility suggests either the use of advanced tools that have left no trace in the archaeological record, or the involvement of beings whose physical capabilities enabled them to achieve precision cutting through methods we cannot currently comprehend. The acoustic properties embedded within many megalithic structures present another layer of mystery that aligns with giant builder theories. Sites like Newgrange in Ireland, the Hypogeum of Malta, and various chambers within the Great Pyramid display specific resonant frequencies that suggest deliberate acoustic design. These chambers can amplify human voices at particular frequencies while dampening others, creating effects that seem designed for beings whose vocal ranges differed significantly from modern humans. Giants possessing larger vocal cords and lung capacity would naturally produce lower frequencies, which align precisely with the resonant characteristics of these ancient chambers. The mathematical principles encoded within megalithic alignments reveal knowledge of astronomical cycles and geometric relationships that shouldn't have been accessible to prehistoric civilizations. The precision required to align structures, with stellar positions accounting for precession over thousands of years, demands both advanced mathematical skills and the ability to maintain accurate observations across multiple generations. This combination of theoretical knowledge and practical implementation suggests builders who possessed both intellectual sophistication and lifespans, or institutional continuity, far exceeding normal human parameters. As you sink deeper into the realm of dreams, let your consciousness expand to encompass the vast mystery that surrounds us. Picture ancient landscapes where beings of incredible stature moved across continents, leaving behind monuments that speak to capabilities we have forgotten how to comprehend. These giants worked not as crude primitives struggling with basic survival, but as master architects whose understanding of engineering, astronomy, and mathematics enabled them to create structures that continue to baffle our most advanced civilizations. The evidence whispers to us from every megalithic site on Earth, encoded in the very stones that these ancient builders shaped and positioned with such impossible precision. Their legacy challenges every assumption we hold about human development and prehistoric capabilities, suggesting that our ancestors shared this world with beings whose extraordinary abilities enabled them to accomplish feats that we, with all our modern technology, can barely imagine, much less replicate. The silence that surrounds this mystery speaks to deeper truths about knowledge and power, about who controls the narrative of human history and what discoveries are deemed too disruptive to acknowledge. Yet the stones themselves cannot be silenced, cannot be explained away or dismissed as coincidence. They stand as eternal witnesses to a time when giants walked the earth, when beings of incredible size and wisdom shaped our world in ways that continue to influence us today, even as their very existence has been systematically erased from our collective memory. In the quiet moments between sleeping and waking, when consciousness drifts between worlds, perhaps we can still hear the echoes of their footsteps, still sense the presence of these ancient architects whose monuments continue to guard secrets that might transform our understanding of who we are and where we came from. The mystery of the megalithic giants remains unresolved, their truth hidden in plain sight among the impossible stones they left behind. as their only testimony to a world we have forgotten how to see. The great silences of prehistory hold more than mere absence of sound. They hold the weight of deliberate erasure, the systematic removal of evidence that once decorated museum halls with the pride of discovery. In the archives of the Smithsonian Institution, filing cabinets from the early 1900s contain correspondence that speaks of regular shipments arriving from excavation sites across the American continent. These letters, written in the careful script of field archaeologists, describe skeletal remains of extraordinary proportions discovered in burial mounds from Ohio to California. Dr. William Webb of the University of Kentucky documented over 1,000 such burials during his excavations in the 1930s and 1940s. His field notes, preserved in university archives, but rarely referenced in modern literature, describe individuals measuring 8 to 10 feet in length, with bone structures indicating both exceptional height and proportional strength. Webb's photographs show excavation teams posed beside partially uncovered skeletons that dwarf the men kneeling around them. Yet these same images have been mysteriously absent from subsequent publications about his work. The pattern repeats with disturbing consistency across institutions worldwide. The Royal Ontario Museum once displayed a collection of oversized artifacts discovered in the Great Lakes region, including copper tools designed for use by individuals of exceptional stature. Museum catalogues from the 1920s list these items with detailed measurements and provenance information, yet attempts to locate these specimens today meet with claims that they never existed or were lost during various institutional reorganizations. In the dusty archives of the Cairo Museum, researchers have uncovered shipping manifests that describe the transfer of unusual skeletal remains from Upper Egypt to undisclosed locations during the British colonial period. These documents, written in fading ink on brittle paper, reference specimens of extraordinary anthropological significance that were deemed too sensitive for public display. The fate of these remains remains unknown, though rumours persist of private collections held by institutions that prefer to keep certain discoveries away from public scrutiny. The systematic nature of this suppression becomes evident when examining the careers of researchers who persisted in studying giant-related discoveries. Professor Ralph Glidden, who excavated numerous burial sites on California's Channel Islands during the 1920s, documented dozens of skeletal remains measuring 7 to 9 feet in length. His discoveries were initially celebrated by the archaeological community, with his findings published in respected journals and displayed at major museums. However, as his claims about prehistoric giant populations gained public attention, funding for his research was gradually withdrawn, and his access to excavation sites was restricted through bureaucratic obstacles that effectively ended his career. Dr. Bruce Russell, working in Nevada during the 1960s, faced similar treatment when his excavations in Lovelock Cave yielded evidence supporting Paiute legends about the Saite-Ka giants. Russell's initial reports describing red-haired mummies of unusual stature were met with enthusiasm from museum curators and university departments. However, when he attempted to secure funding for expanded research and radiocarbon dating of his specimens, he encountered unexpected resistance from funding bodies that had previously supported his work. The specimens themselves were eventually transferred to storage facilities where they remain inaccessible to independent researchers. The suppression extends beyond individual careers to entire categories of evidence. Newspaper archives from the 19th and early 20th centuries contain hundreds of reports documenting giant skeletal discoveries across North America. The consistency of these accounts, their detailed descriptions of excavation contexts, and the involvement of respected local officials suggest legitimate archaeological discoveries rather than hoaxes or misidentifications. Yet these same discoveries are absent from modern archaeological databases, as if an entire category of evidence has been systematically excluded from academic consideration. The Seneca County News of Ohio, in its August 1891 edition, reported the discovery of a burial mound containing skeletal remains of individuals measuring 12 to 14 feet in length. The article describes the involvement of local physicians and university professors in documenting the find, with detailed measurements and descriptions of associated artifacts. Similar reports appear in newspapers from Wisconsin, Minnesota, Tennessee, and dozens of other states, creating a pattern of discovery that spans the entire continent. The Chicago Tribune's 1897 coverage of excavations near Maple Creek described the discovery of a burial chamber containing the remains of 8 individuals, all measuring over 9 feet in length. The report includes quotes from Dr. H.P. Hamilton of the Field Museum, who authenticated the find and supervised the careful documentation of the burial context. Yet searches of Field Museum records today reveal no trace of Hamilton's involvement or the specimens he reportedly studied. This pattern of documented discovery followed by systematic erasure raises profound questions about the forces that shape our understanding of prehistory. The motivation for such widespread suppression remains unclear, though several possibilities emerge when considering the implications of acknowledging prehistoric giant populations. The existence of beings possessing capabilities far exceeding normal human parameters would challenge fundamental assumptions about human development, technological progress, and the nature of ancient civilizations. Religious institutions have historically played a role in shaping archaeological interpretation, with discoveries that contradict established theological timelines often facing resistance from faith-based organizations with significant cultural influence. The biblical account of the Nephilim, while acknowledging the existence of giants in ancient times, places these beings within a specific theological framework that might be challenged by extensive archaeological evidence of widespread giant populations. The preservation of religious orthodoxy may have provided motivation for suppressing evidence that could complicate traditional interpretations of human origins and development. Political considerations also emerge as potential factors in the systematic suppression of giant-related discoveries. The acknowledgement of sophisticated prehistoric civilizations possessing capabilities exceeding those of modern humans would challenge narratives of linear progress that form the foundation of contemporary political and economic systems. If ancient giants could accomplish engineering feats that modern technology struggles to replicate, it would undermine assumptions about technological advancement and human development that justify current social hierarchies and institutional structures. The role of academic institutions in maintaining established paradigms cannot be overlooked when examining the suppression of disruptive archaeological evidence. University departments, funding bodies, and professional organizations create powerful incentives for researchers to pursue safe topics that build incrementally upon accepted knowledge rather than challenging fundamental assumptions. Careers are built upon conformity to established methodologies and interpretations, while researchers who venture into controversial territory often find themselves marginalized or excluded from professional opportunities. The peer review process, while designed to maintain scientific rigor, can also function as a filtering mechanism that excludes evidence challenging established paradigms. Papers describing giant skeletal discoveries face scrutiny that goes beyond normal methodological evaluation, with reviewers often demanding levels of proof that would be considered excessive for less controversial topics. This creates a double standard where anomalous evidence must meet extraordinary standards, while conventional interpretations are accepted with minimal questioning. Museum curators face similar pressures when deciding which discoveries to display and how to interpret them for public consumption. Exhibits that challenge established timelines or suggest unusual prehistoric populations must navigate complex political and financial considerations, including relationships with donors, government funding bodies, and educational institutions. The easiest path often involves avoiding controversial topics altogether, leading to displays that present sanitized versions of prehistory that exclude the most intriguing and significant discoveries. The digital age has created new opportunities for both preserving and suppressing archaeological evidence. While the internet allows for rapid dissemination of information and images that might otherwise remain hidden in institutional archives, It also enables the systematic removal of content through algorithmic filtering and platform policies that can eliminate entire categories of information from public access. Researchers investigating giant-related discoveries often find their content restricted, demonetized, or removed entirely from major platforms, limiting their ability to share findings with broader audiences. The classification of certain archaeological sites as sensitive or restricted areas provides another mechanism for controlling access to potentially disruptive evidence. Military installations, national security zones, and protected wilderness areas can effectively prevent independent investigation of megalithic sites and burial grounds that might yield evidence of prehistoric giant populations. When discoveries are made in such restricted areas, the evidence can be classified or removed without public scrutiny, maintaining official silence about findings that might challenge established narratives. International agreements and diplomatic protocols also play a role in shaping which archaeological discoveries receive public attention. Excavations in politically sensitive regions often operate under restrictions that limit the publication of findings, particularly when those findings might complicate relationships between nations or challenge historical claims to territory. The repatriation of archaeological specimens to countries of origin can effectively remove evidence from scientific study, especially when receiving nations have political motivations for suppressing certain types of discoveries. The commercialization of archaeology through tourism and popular media creates additional pressures that influence how discoveries are presented to the public. Sites that generate significant tourist revenue must maintain interpretations that appeal to visitors while avoiding controversial claims that might reduce their commercial appeal. Popular documentaries and books about ancient mysteries often sensationalize evidence while simultaneously discrediting it, creating a false dichotomy that dismisses legitimate anomalous discoveries as entertainment rather than serious scientific inquiry. The training of new archaeologists within academic institutions perpetuates these patterns of suppression through curriculum design that emphasizes established interpretations while discouraging investigation of controversial topics. Graduate students learn to avoid research areas that might jeopardize their career prospects, creating a self-reinforcing cycle where each generation of scholars is less likely to pursue disruptive investigations than their predecessors. The result is an archaeological establishment that becomes increasingly insular and resistant to paradigm-shifting discoveries. Professional archaeological organizations maintain these restrictions through certification processes, publication standards, and conference acceptance criteria that effectively exclude research challenging established paradigms. Researchers who persist in investigating giant-related discoveries often find themselves unable to present their work at major conferences or publish in respected journals, limiting their ability to influence mainstream archaeological interpretation. This institutional gatekeeping ensures that controversial evidence remains confined to fringe publications and alternative research communities. The psychological dimension of suppression cannot be ignored when examining why evidence of prehistoric giants faces such systematic resistance. The implications of acknowledging beings whose capabilities far exceeded our own challenges, fundamental assumptions about human uniqueness and superiority that form the foundation of modern consciousness. If giants once walked the earth and accomplished feats we cannot replicate, it forces us to confront the possibility that human history involves cycles of rise and decline, rather than steady progress toward greater sophistication. This psychological resistance manifests in various forms of cognitive dissonance when confronting evidence that challenges established worldviews. Rather than adjusting interpretations to accommodate new data, there is a tendency to dismiss or reinterpret evidence to maintain consistency with existing beliefs. Giant skeletal discoveries become misidentified animal remains, megalithic precision becomes coincidental natural formation, and advanced prehistoric capabilities become primitive achievements misunderstood by modern observers. The fear of ridicule and professional marginalization creates additional psychological barriers that prevent serious investigation of giant-related evidence. Researchers who might otherwise pursue anomalous discoveries often avoid topics associated with fringe theories or conspiracy thinking, even when the evidence itself merits serious scientific attention. This creates a self-censoring effect where potentially groundbreaking research remains unexplored, not because of lack of evidence, but because of social and professional pressures that discourage investigation. The compartmentalization of knowledge within academic disciplines further contributes to the suppression of evidence that requires interdisciplinary analysis. Giant-related discoveries often involve elements of archaeology, anthropology, geology, engineering, and other fields, yet researchers typically work within narrow specializations that limit their ability to synthesize evidence across disciplines. This fragmentation allows anomalous discoveries to be dismissed by specialists who claim insufficient expertise in related fields, while avoiding collaborative investigation that might reveal significant patterns. The funding structure of modern archaeology creates additional incentives for avoiding controversial research topics. Grant applications must demonstrate practical applications and measurable outcomes that align with institutional priorities, making it difficult to secure support for investigations that might challenge established paradigms. Research into giant-related discoveries offers few obvious commercial or political benefits, making it an unattractive investment for funding bodies focused on practical applications and measurable returns. The internationalization of archaeological research has created opportunities for evidence suppression through diplomatic channels and international agreements that restrict access to certain sites and specimens. When discoveries are made in regions with complex political situations, evidence can be classified or restricted through national security considerations that effectively remove it from scientific scrutiny. The repatriation of artifacts and specimens to countries of origin can also serve as a mechanism for suppressing evidence when receiving nations have political motivations for controlling information about their prehistoric past. The role of private collectors and institutions in acquiring and controlling archaeological specimens creates additional opportunities for evidence suppression. Wealthy individuals and organizations with specific ideological or financial interests can acquire significant discoveries and remove them from public access, ensuring that evidence challenging established narratives remains hidden from broader scientific investigation. These private collections often operate without the transparency and accountability required of public institutions, making it difficult to track the fate of important specimens. The digital preservation of archaeological evidence presents both opportunities and challenges for maintaining access to suppressed discoveries. While electronic archives can preserve information that might otherwise be lost, they also create new vulnerabilities through server failures, platform changes, and deliberate removal of content. The centralization of digital information on a few major platforms makes it possible for large amounts of evidence to be eliminated through policy changes or technical failures, creating new forms of institutional control over archaeological information. The education of the general public about archaeological discoveries occurs primarily through popular media, museum displays, and educational materials that present simplified versions of prehistory designed for mass consumption. This popularization process often eliminates controversial or complex evidence in favor of clear narratives that support established interpretations. The result is a public understanding of archaeology that excludes the most significant anomalous discoveries while promoting sanitized versions of prehistory that avoid challenging fundamental assumptions about human development. The legal framework surrounding archaeological discoveries provides additional mechanisms for controlling access to potentially disruptive evidence. Laws governing excavation permits, specimen ownership, and site access can be used to restrict investigation of locations that might yield evidence of prehistoric giants. When discoveries are made, legal challenges can prevent publication or display of findings, while bureaucratic processes ensure that evidence remains inaccessible to independent researchers. The phenomenon of evidence suppression in archaeology reflects broader patterns of institutional control over information that challenges established power structures and worldviews. The systematic nature of this suppression, occurring across multiple institutions, time periods, and geographical regions suggests coordination that goes beyond simple academic conservatism or professional caution. The stakes involved in maintaining current interpretations of human prehistory appear significant enough to justify extensive efforts to control and suppress evidence that might fundamentally alter our understanding of who we are and where we came from. As consciousness fades into the realm of dreams, consider the vast machinery of suppression that operates to maintain our collective ignorance about the true scope of human prehistory. Picture archives filled with evidence that will never see daylight, specimens that have vanished into private collections, and researchers whose careers were destroyed for asking uncomfortable questions. The silence that surrounds the mystery of prehistoric giants is not the absence of evidence, but the presence of forces that work tirelessly to ensure that certain truths remain buried beneath layers of institutional denial and systematic erasure. The giants who once walked this earth left behind monuments of stone that cannot be silenced or suppressed. Yet the evidence of their physical remains has been methodically removed from public view through processes so thorough and consistent that they suggest a coordinated effort spanning generations of institutional gatekeepers. What truths lie buried in classified archives and private collections? What discoveries remain hidden beneath layers of bureaucratic obstruction and professional intimidation? The questions echo through the darkness, demanding answers that may never come, yet refusing to be forgotten entirely. In the spaces between official history and suppressed evidence, between documented discoveries and their mysterious disappearance, lies a truth that challenges everything we think we know about our past and the beings who shared this world with our ancestors. The mystery of the prehistoric giants persists not because evidence is lacking, but because the evidence has been systematically hidden from those who might use it to rewrite the story of human civilization. Their legacy endures in stone monuments that cannot be explained away, in legends that refuse to die, and in the questions that haunt every honest examination of our mysterious prehistoric past. The morning mist clings to the ancient stones of Karnak in Brittany, where over 3,000 megalithic monuments stretch across the French countryside in precise geometric alignments that boggle the mind. These standing stones, some reaching heights of 20 feet and weighing dozens of tons, were arranged in patterns so complex that modern archaeologists struggle to decipher their purpose. The official narrative suggests they were erected by Neolithic farmers using primitive tools and sheer determination. Yet the mathematical precision of their placement tells a different story entirely. Walk among these silent sentinels and feel the weight of their mystery pressing down upon you like the morning fog that refuses to lift. Each stone was quarried from distant locations, transported across challenging terrain, and positioned with an accuracy that suggests builders who possessed both intimate knowledge of celestial mechanics and the physical capability to implement their vision on a scale that dwarfs most modern construction projects. The local Breton legends speak of the Corrigans, dwarf-like beings who worked alongside much larger entities called the Géants de Pierre. Stone giants who could lift and position these massive blocks as easily as children arranging toy blocks. The precision of Karnak's alignments becomes even more remarkable when examined through the lens of astronomical observation. The stone rows are oriented to track complex lunar cycles that span decades, requiring not only advanced mathematical understanding, but also the ability to maintain accurate observations across multiple generations. This level of institutional knowledge suggests builders who possessed either extraordinary longevance or a cultural continuity that far exceeded what we typically associate with Neolithic societies. Yet Karnak is merely one thread in a tapestry of megalithic mysteries that spans the globe, each site whispering the same impossible truth about builders whose capabilities transcended normal human limitations. In the remote valleys of Kashmir, where the mountains touch the sky and ancient secrets hide beneath eternal snows, stands the megalithic complex of Burzahom. Here, Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of a civilization that thrived over 4,000 years ago, leaving behind stone structures that challenge every assumption about prehistoric capabilities in the Indian subcontinent. The excavations at Burzahom revealed dwellings built around massive central posts that would have required trees of extraordinary size, suggesting either a dramatically different forest ecosystem or builders who possessed the strength to work with timber that would challenge modern logging equipment. The post holes themselves are carved with precision that implies tools and techniques far advanced beyond the copper and stone implements supposedly available to Bronze Age inhabitants of the region. More intriguing still are the discovered artifacts scaled for use by individuals of unusual stature, cooking vessels of enormous capacity, tools with handles extending far beyond normal human proportions, and architectural elements designed for beings whose daily lives required accommodations that dwarf typical human needs. Local Kashmiri folklore has preserved detailed accounts of the Rakshasa, powerful beings of great size who possessed advanced knowledge of construction and metallurgy, teaching early human settlements the arts of civilization before withdrawing to the high mountain regions where they gradually faded from human contact. The pattern repeats across the vast expanse of Central Asia, where the harsh steppes and towering mountain ranges hide archaeological treasures that challenge our understanding of prehistoric human populations. In the remote reaches of Mongolia, where few Western archaeologists have ventured to conduct systematic surveys, local herders speak of ancient burial sites that contain remains of individuals whose bones stretch far beyond normal human proportions. These discoveries, when they occur, are quickly claimed by government authorities and transported to facilities where they remain inaccessible to independent investigation. The systematic suppression of such finds follows patterns that have become disturbingly familiar to researchers who attempt to study anomalous prehistoric evidence. Initial discoveries generate excitement and preliminary documentation, only to be followed by bureaucratic obstacles, funding restrictions, and eventually complete denial that significant findings ever occurred. The specimens themselves vanish into classified collections or private holdings, where they remain beyond the reach of scientific scrutiny. This suppression extends to the deliberate alteration of site access, where locations that might yield evidence of giant builders are declared off-limits through various legal mechanisms. Military zones, environmental protection areas, and cultural preservation designations can all serve to prevent independent investigation of sites that might challenge established archaeological narratives. When access is granted, it often comes with restrictions that limit the scope of investigation or the publication of findings, ensuring that disruptive evidence remains contained within narrow academic circles. The role of international politics in shaping archaeological interpretation becomes particularly evident when examining sites located in regions where discoveries might complicate existing historical narratives or territorial claims. Evidence of advanced prehistoric civilizations possessing capabilities that exceed modern assumptions can be politically inconvenient when it challenges national origin stories or cultural supremacy claims. The result is a complex web of diplomatic considerations that influence which discoveries receive serious study and which are quietly dismissed or ignored. Consider the mysterious stone complexes scattered throughout the Sahara Desert, where shifting sands occasionally reveal megalithic structures that predate the region's transformation from lush grassland to arid wasteland. These discoveries, when they occur, often involve stones of such massive proportions and precise placement that they suggest builders who possess both advanced engineering knowledge and the physical strength to implement their designs in one of the world's most challenging environments. The Saharan megaliths display construction techniques that align remarkably with those found at sites thousands of miles away, suggesting either widespread cultural contact or shared access to knowledge and capabilities that transcend our current understanding of prehistoric human development. The astronomical alignments embedded within these structures demonstrate sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics that required both theoretical knowledge and the practical ability to implement complex calculations on a monumental scale. Local Tuareg traditions preserve detailed accounts of these structures' origins, describing them as the work of the Kel Esuf, powerful beings of great stature who possess the ability to move stones through supernatural means. These legends describe construction techniques that seem to combine advanced engineering principles with capabilities that border on the miraculous, including the use of sound frequencies to manipulate stone and the ability to transport massive blocks across vast distances without apparent effort. The consistency of these accounts across the vast expanse of the Sahara suggests either remarkable cultural continuity or shared memories of actual historical events involving beings whose capabilities far exceeded normal human parameters. The technical details preserved in oral traditions often align precisely with the physical evidence found at megalithic sites, lending credence to the possibility that these stories preserve accurate historical information rather than purely mythological constructs. The phenomenon of acoustic manipulation in megalithic construction deserves particular attention when considering the possibility of giant builders. Recent experiments have demonstrated that specific sound frequencies can indeed alter the molecular structure of certain stone types, making them temporarily malleable and easier to shape. The application of such techniques on the massive scale, suggested by global megalithic sites, would require both advanced understanding of acoustic principles and the physical capabilities to generate and direct the necessary sound waves with precision. Giants possessing vocal cords and lung capacity proportional to their size would naturally be capable of producing the low-frequency sounds most effective for acoustic stone manipulation. Their enhanced physical strength would enable them to create and control acoustic devices that normal-sized humans could not operate effectively. This combination of natural acoustic capabilities and enhanced physical strength could explain the precision stone shaping found at megalithic sites worldwide without requiring the advanced technological civilization that conventional archaeology insists did not exist in prehistoric times. The engineering principles displayed at megalithic sites reveal understanding of structural mechanics that seems impossible for civilizations supposedly working with primitive tools and limited organizational capabilities. The distribution of weight, the use of counterbalances, and the integration of seismic resistance measures all demonstrate knowledge that typically develops through extensive practical experience with large-scale construction projects. Yet these principles appear fully formed in the earliest megalithic sites, suggesting access to knowledge sources that transcend normal technological development patterns. The mathematical concepts embedded within megalithic alignments require understanding of geometric relationships and astronomical cycles that shouldn't have been accessible to prehistoric civilizations. The calculation of stellar positions accounting for precession across thousands of years demands both advanced mathematical skills and the ability to maintain accurate observations across multiple generations. This combination of theoretical sophistication and practical implementation suggests builders who possessed either extraordinary lifespans or institutional continuity far exceeding normal human parameters. The global distribution of megalithic construction techniques raises fundamental questions about communication and knowledge transfer in prehistoric times. The consistency of methods across continents separated by vast oceans and millennia of time suggests either direct contact between ancient civilizations or shared access to knowledge sources that modern archaeology has yet to acknowledge. The precision with which similar techniques appear at sites worldwide points toward a common origin that challenges our fundamental assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities and cultural development. The systematic dismissal of evidence supporting giant builder theories reveals troubling patterns within academic institutions that prioritize maintaining established paradigms over investigating disruptive discoveries. Researchers who pursue anomalous evidence often find their funding restricted, their access to sites limited, and their professional reputations attacked through ad hominem arguments that avoid addressing the evidence itself. This creates a chilling effect that discourages investigation of topics that might challenge fundamental assumptions about human prehistory and development. The peer review process, while nominally designed to maintain scientific rigor, often functions as a filtering mechanism that excludes evidence challenging established interpretations. Papers describing discoveries that support giant builder theories face scrutiny that goes far beyond normal methodological evaluation, with reviewers demanding extraordinary levels of proof while accepting conventional explanations with minimal questioning. This double standard ensures that anomalous evidence remains confined to fringe publications, while mainstream journals continue to promote interpretations that align with established academic orthodoxy. Museum curators face similar pressures when deciding how to present archaeological discoveries to the public. Exhibits that might suggest unusual prehistoric populations or capabilities must navigate complex political and financial considerations, including relationships with funding bodies, educational institutions, and government agencies. The safest path often involves presenting sanitized versions of prehistory that exclude the most significant anomalous discoveries, while promoting narratives that support current academic consensus. The digital age has created new opportunities for both preserving and suppressing archaeological evidence that challenges established paradigms. While the internet enables rapid dissemination of information that might otherwise remain hidden in institutional archives, it also provides mechanisms for systematic content removal through algorithmic filtering and platform policies that can eliminate entire categories of information from public access. Researchers investigating giant-related discoveries often find their content restricted, demonetized, or removed entirely from major platforms, limiting their ability to reach broader audiences with their findings. The classification of certain archaeological sites as restricted areas provides another mechanism for controlling access to potentially disruptive evidence. Military installations, national security zones, and protected wilderness designations can effectively prevent independent investigation of locations that might yield evidence supporting giant builder theories. When discoveries are made in such restricted areas, the evidence can be classified or removed without public scrutiny, maintaining official silence about findings that might challenge established historical narratives. International agreements and diplomatic protocols also influence which archaeological discoveries receive public attention and serious scientific study. Excavations in politically sensitive regions often operate under restrictions that limit the publication of findings, particularly when those findings might complicate relationships between nations or challenge historical claims to territory and cultural heritage. The repatriation of archaeological specimens to countries of origin can effectively remove evidence from scientific investigation, especially when receiving nations have political motivations for suppressing certain types of discoveries. The commercialization of archaeology through tourism and popular media creates additional pressures that influence how discoveries are presented to public audiences. Sites that generate significant tourist revenue must maintain interpretations that appeal to visitors while avoiding controversial claims that might reduce their commercial viability. Popular documentaries and publications about ancient mysteries often sensationalize evidence while simultaneously discrediting it, creating false dichotomies that dismiss legitimate anomalous discoveries as entertainment rather than serious scientific inquiry worthy of investigation. The training of new archaeologists within academic institutions perpetuates patterns of evidence suppression through curriculum design that emphasizes established interpretations while discouraging investigation of controversial topics that might jeopardize career prospects. Graduate students learn to avoid research areas that could threaten their professional advancement, creating self-reinforcing cycles where each generation of scholars becomes increasingly reluctant to pursue disruptive investigations that might challenge fundamental assumptions about human prehistory and development. Professional archaeological organizations maintain these restrictions through certification processes, publication standards, and conference acceptance criteria that effectively exclude research challenging established paradigms about prehistoric human capabilities. Researchers who persist in investigating evidence supporting giant builder theories often find themselves unable to present their work at major academic conferences or publish in respected journals, limiting their ability to influence mainstream archaeological interpretation and ensuring that controversial evidence remains confined to alternative research communities operating outside institutional frameworks. The psychological dimension of evidence suppression cannot be overlooked when examining why discoveries supporting giant builder theories face such systematic institutional resistance. The implications of acknowledging beings whose capabilities far exceeded our own challenges, fundamental assumptions about human uniqueness and technological superiority that form the foundation of modern consciousness and cultural identity. If giants once walked the earth and accomplished engineering feats that we cannot replicate using contemporary methods, it forces uncomfortable confrontations with the possibility that human history involves cycles of rise and decline rather than steady progress toward greater sophistication and capability. This psychological resistance manifests through various forms of cognitive dissonance when confronting evidence that challenges established worldviews about human development and prehistoric capabilities. Rather than adjusting interpretations to accommodate new data that might support giant builder theories, there exists a tendency to dismiss or reinterpret evidence in ways that maintain consistency with existing beliefs and assumptions. Giant skeletal discoveries become misidentified animal remains. Megalithic precision becomes coincidental natural formation, and advanced prehistoric capabilities become primitive achievements misunderstood by modern observers who project contemporary limitations onto ancient builders. The fear of professional ridicule and academic marginalization creates additional psychological barriers that prevent serious investigation of evidence supporting giant builder theories. Researchers, who might otherwise pursue anomalous discoveries, often avoid topics associated with fringe theories or conspiracy thinking, even when the physical evidence itself merits serious scientific attention and investigation. This creates self-censoring effects where potentially groundbreaking research remains unexplored, not because of insufficient evidence, but because of social and professional pressures that discourage investigation of topics that might challenge established academic orthodoxy. The compartmentalization of knowledge within academic disciplines further contributes to suppression of evidence that requires interdisciplinary analysis to understand fully. Discoveries supporting giant builder theories often involve elements of archaeology, anthropology, geology, engineering, acoustics, and other specialized fields. Yet researchers typically work within narrow specializations that limit their ability to synthesize evidence across multiple disciplines effectively. This fragmentation allows anomalous discoveries to be dismissed by specialists who claim insufficient expertise in related fields, while avoiding collaborative investigations that might reveal significant patterns supporting alternative interpretations of prehistoric human capabilities. As you drift deeper into the realm of sleep, let your consciousness expand to encompass the vast mystery that surrounds these ancient monuments scattered across our world, like pieces of a puzzle we have forgotten how to solve. Picture landscapes where beings of extraordinary stature once moved with purpose and precision, leaving behind testaments to capabilities that challenge every assumption we hold about the development of human civilization and the limits of prehistoric achievement. The evidence continues to accumulate despite systematic efforts to suppress or discredit discoveries that might support giant builder theories. Each new megalithic site reveals construction techniques that seem impossible for the civilizations credited with their creation. Each ancient legend preserves details that align with physical evidence in ways that suggest historical accuracy rather than mythological invention. The silence that surrounds these mysteries speaks not to absence of evidence, but to the presence of forces that work tirelessly to maintain established narratives about human prehistory, while suppressing truths that might fundamentally alter our understanding of who we are and where we came from. The stones themselves cannot be silenced or explained away through conventional archaeological interpretation. They stand as eternal witnesses to a time when giants walked the earth, when beings of incredible size and wisdom shaped our world in ways that continue to influence us today, even as their very existence has been systematically erased from our collective memory and institutional knowledge. Their legacy endures in monuments that refuse to conform to established timelines, in legends that persist despite academic dismissal, and in questions that haunt every honest examination of our mysterious prehistoric past and the beings who may have shared this world with our ancestors. In the quiet spaces between official history and suppressed evidence, between documented discoveries and their systematic erasure, lies a truth that challenges everything we think we know about human development and the capabilities that once existed on this earth. The mystery of the megalithic giants remains unresolved, not because evidence is lacking, but because the evidence threatens fundamental assumptions about human uniqueness and technological progress that form the foundation of our modern worldview and institutional authority. The winds of the Atacama Desert whisper across stones that have stood sentinel for millennia, their surfaces bearing witness to hands that worked with a precision that defies our understanding of prehistoric capabilities. Here, in the world's most arid landscape, megalithic structures emerge from the sand like ancient monuments to a forgotten age of giants. The blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, display cutting techniques so refined that modern diamond-tipped tools struggle to achieve similar results on the same volcanic stone. Local Atacameño peoples speak in hushed tones of the Chulpas, towering beings who could split mountains with their bare hands and reshape valleys according to their will. These legends describe construction methods that seem to blur the line between engineering and magic, where massive stones were lifted and positioned through techniques that appear supernatural to observers of normal stature. The consistency of these accounts across the vast expanse of the Atacama suggests not mere folklore, but preserved memories of actual encounters with beings whose capabilities transcended human limitations. The precision displayed in these desert monuments becomes even more remarkable when considered within the context of the Atacama's extreme environmental conditions, working at altitudes where oxygen levels challenge even acclimatized modern humans. Constructing in temperatures that swing from scorching heat to bitter cold, these ancient builders somehow achieved tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters. The engineering required to account for thermal expansion, seismic activity, and the corrosive effects of wind-blown sand suggests knowledge that encompasses not only structural mechanics, but advanced understanding of materials science. Moving eastward across the South American continent, the mysterious stone circles of Brazil's interior present another chapter in this global anthology of impossible constructions. Hidden beneath the canopy of the Amazon rainforest, these megalithic complexes were discovered only recently through satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar that revealed geometric patterns stretching across hundreds of square kilometers. When archaeological teams finally reached these remote sites, they found stones arranged with mathematical precision that rivals the greatest achievements of classical civilization. The Brazilian megaliths display a sophistication that challenges everything we thought we knew about prehistoric Amazonian cultures. The blocks, quarried from locations hundreds of miles away, were somehow transported through dense jungle terrain and positioned to create complex astronomical alignments that track celestial events across multiple cycles. The scale of coordination required for such undertakings suggests not scattered tribal groups struggling for survival, but organized civilizations possessing both advanced knowledge and the physical capabilities to implement their vision on a continental scale. Indigenous Kayapo elders speak of these structures as the work of the Mbengokra, giant ancestors who possess the strength of many men and the wisdom of the stars. According to oral traditions carefully preserved across countless generations, these beings could communicate across vast distances through methods that transcended normal human speech, coordinating massive construction projects that spanned the entire Amazon basin. The legends describe techniques for moving stones that involved harmonic frequencies, with the giants using their powerful voices to create resonances that made solid rock as malleable as river clay. The acoustic properties of the Amazonian stone circles support these traditional accounts in ways that modern science is only beginning to understand. Recent studies using sensitive recording equipment have detected subsonic frequencies that emanate from the structures during certain atmospheric conditions, creating sound patterns that suggest the stones themselves were tuned to specific harmonic relationships. The precision required to achieve such acoustic effects would demand both advanced understanding of sound physics and the physical strength to position massive stones with tolerances measured in fractions of degrees. The implications of acoustic stone manipulation become even more intriguing when considered within the context of recent discoveries about infrasound's effects on human consciousness. Frequencies below the threshold of human hearing have been shown to induce altered states of awareness, enhance memory consolidation, and facilitate what some researchers describe as expanded consciousness. If the Amazon megaliths were indeed designed to generate specific acoustic environments, they might represent prehistoric technologies for enhancing human cognitive capabilities through precisely controlled sound manipulation. This possibility aligns with shamanic traditions throughout South America that describe ancient sites as places of power where communication with otherworldly beings becomes possible. The consistency of these accounts across cultures separated by vast distances and linguistic barriers suggests either remarkable cultural diffusion or shared experiences with acoustic phenomena that transcend normal sensory perception. The giants described in these traditions are often portrayed not merely as builders, but as teachers who used their constructions to facilitate knowledge transfer between dimensions of reality. The systematic exploration of South America's interior continues to reveal megalithic sites that challenge conventional archaeological timelines and capability assessments. In the remote highlands of Guyana, recent expeditions have documented stone structures displaying construction techniques that seem impossible for the hunter-gatherer societies supposedly inhabiting the region during the proposed construction periods. The blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, are fitted together with precision that rivals the finest examples of Incan stonework, yet they predate known Incan civilization by millennia. Local Peman peoples maintain detailed oral histories about these structures' origins, describing them as the work of the Macunaíma, giant beings who shaped the landscape during the world's creation. These legends include specific technical details about construction methods, describing tools and techniques that seem designed for beings possessing strength far beyond normal human capabilities. The stories speak of stone-cutting implements that could slice through solid rock as easily as knives cut through soft fruit, and lifting devices that moved massive blocks using principles of leverage that modern engineers struggle to fully comprehend. The evidence supporting these traditional accounts extends beyond the structures themselves to include artifacts scaled for use by individuals of extraordinary stature. Throughout South America's interior, archaeological surveys have uncovered oversized tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects that seem designed for beings whose physical requirements far exceeded normal human parameters. These discoveries, when they occur, often disappear quickly into private collections or government repositories where they remain inaccessible to independent investigation. The pattern of discovery followed by systematic suppression extends across the entire South American continent, with significant finds being classified, relocated, or simply denied despite extensive documentation by field researchers. This suppression follows protocols that suggest coordination between various institutions and government agencies, creating barriers to investigation that seem designed to prevent public awareness of evidence supporting alternative interpretations of prehistoric human capabilities. The role of mining operations in uncovering and subsequently suppressing giant-related discoveries deserves particular attention when examining South American archaeological evidence. Large-scale extraction operations frequently encounter unusual skeletal remains and oversized artifacts during their excavations, yet these discoveries rarely receive serious scientific investigation. Instead, they are typically removed by company security personnel and disposed of through undisclosed methods that prevent academic study or public documentation. Several former mining engineers have reported privately about encounters with skeletal remains measuring 10 to 15 feet in length, discovered in caves and burial chambers throughout the Andes Mountains. These accounts describe bones displaying unusual density and mineral composition, suggesting either genetic adaptations to high-altitude environments or preservation methods that exceed known prehistoric capabilities. The witnesses describe systematic efforts to suppress these discoveries through corporate and government channels that classify such finds as trade secrets or matters of national security. The motivations behind this systematic suppression become clearer when considering the implications of acknowledging prehistoric populations possessing capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about human development and technological progress. If giants once inhabited South America and accomplished engineering feats that modern technology struggles to replicate, it would undermine narratives of linear advancement that justify current economic and political structures based on technological superiority and cultural evolution. The preservation of indigenous oral traditions provides one of the few remaining windows into this suppressed history. Yet these knowledge systems face increasing pressure from modernization and cultural assimilation that threatens to erase millennia of carefully maintained historical accounts. Elders who possess detailed knowledge of giant builder traditions often find themselves reluctant to share information with outsiders, having learned through experience that such revelations can lead to unwanted attention from government authorities and academic institutions seeking to either exploit or discredit their cultural heritage. The linguistic analysis of indigenous terms referring to prehistoric giants reveals consistent patterns across South American cultures that suggest shared historical experiences rather than purely mythological constructs. Words describing these beings emphasize their dual nature as both powerful builders and benevolent teachers, with root meanings that translate to concepts like sky people, stone shapers, and wisdom bringers. The consistency of these linguistic patterns across languages, with no apparent historical connection, suggests either remarkable cultural diffusion or common source experiences involving actual encounters with beings possessing the described capabilities. The astronomical alignments embedded within South American megalithic sites demonstrate mathematical sophistication that challenges conventional assumptions about prehistoric indigenous capabilities. The calculations required to track complex celestial cycles across thousands of years demand both advanced theoretical knowledge and the practical ability to implement precise measurements on a monumental scale. This combination of intellectual sophistication and physical capability aligns perfectly with traditional accounts describing giants who possessed both extraordinary strength and profound wisdom. The engineering principles displayed at these sites reveal understanding of structural mechanics that seems impossible for civilizations supposedly working with primitive tools and limited organizational capabilities. The use of counterbalances, the integration of seismic resistance measures, and the precise distribution of load forces all demonstrate knowledge that typically develops through extensive practical experience with large-scale construction projects. Yet, these principles appear fully formed in the earliest South American megalithic sites, suggesting access to knowledge sources that transcend normal technological American megalithic sites. Continues development patterns. The systematic dating of South to push back the timeline for advanced construction capabilities in the region, with some structures showing evidence of construction periods that predate established chronologies for complex civilization in the Americas by thousands of years. These findings challenge fundamental assumptions about human migration patterns, cultural development, and technological capabilities that form the foundation of current archaeological interpretation. The suppression of radiocarbon dating results that contradict established timelines has become a recurring pattern in South American archaeology, with laboratories reporting pressure to modify or suppress results that might challenge conventional chronologies. This creates an artificial constraint on archaeological interpretation, that prevent serious consideration of evidence suggesting much earlier development of advanced construction capabilities in the region. The role of international academic institutions in maintaining these constraints reflects broader patterns of intellectual colonialism that prioritize maintaining established paradigms over investigating evidence that might challenge Western-centric interpretations of human development and cultural achievement. South American discoveries that suggest indigenous populations possessing capabilities exceeding European technological achievements are systematically marginalized or reinterpreted to maintain narratives of cultural hierarchy that justify historical and contemporary power relationships. The digital documentation of South American megalithic sites has created new opportunities for preserving evidence that might otherwise be suppressed or destroyed through conventional academic channels. Independent researchers using satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and other remote sensing technologies can identify and document sites without requiring official permits or institutional support that might compromise the integrity of their investigations. This technological democratization of archaeological research creates opportunities for evidence preservation that transcends traditional gatekeeping mechanisms. The emergence of alternative funding sources for archaeological investigation has begun to challenge the monopoly of established institutions over research priorities and interpretation frameworks. Crowd-funded expeditions, privately sponsored research initiatives, and indigenous-led investigation projects create opportunities for pursuing evidence that mainstream institutions might prefer to ignore or suppress. These alternative approaches often produce findings that contradict established narratives while providing platforms for disseminating results despite institutional resistance. The growing recognition of indigenous knowledge systems as legitimate sources of historical information represents a paradigm shift that could fundamentally alter our understanding of South American prehistory and the beings who may have shaped the continent's ancient landscape. Rather than dismissing oral traditions as primitive mythology, researchers are beginning to recognize these carefully preserved accounts as potentially accurate historical records that complement and often surpass the information available through conventional archaeological methods. The integration of traditional knowledge with modern investigative techniques creates opportunities for breakthrough discoveries that might revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric capabilities and the beings who possess them. When indigenous elders work directly with researchers who respect their cultural perspectives and knowledge systems, the resulting investigations often uncover evidence that has been overlooked or misinterpreted by conventional archaeological approaches focused solely on material remains. The psychological resistance to accepting evidence of prehistoric giants reflects deeper cultural biases that prioritize maintaining assumptions about human uniqueness and technological superiority over honest investigation of anomalous discoveries. The possibility that beings of extraordinary capabilities once inhabited South America challenges fundamental beliefs about human development and achievement that form the foundation of modern consciousness and cultural identity. This resistance manifests through various forms of cognitive dissonance when confronting evidence that clearly supports alternative interpretations of prehistoric human populations and their capabilities. Rather than adjusting theoretical frameworks to accommodate new data, there exists a persistent tendency to dismiss, reinterpret, or suppress evidence in ways that maintain consistency with established beliefs about human limitations and technological development. The fear of professional and social marginalization creates additional barriers that prevent serious investigation of evidence supporting giant builder theories in South America. Researchers who might otherwise pursue anomalous discoveries often avoid topics associated with fringe theories or alternative archaeology, even when the physical evidence itself merits serious scientific attention and investigation. This creates self-censoring effects, where potentially revolutionary research remains unexplored due to social and professional pressures rather than lack of compelling evidence. As your consciousness drifts toward the realm of dreams, Let your imagination soar above the vast South American landscape, where evidence of ancient giants lies scattered like pieces of a puzzle we have forgotten how to solve. Picture towering figures moving across prehistoric terrain with purpose and precision, their hands shaping stone and earth according to visions that encompassed not merely practical construction, but profound understanding of cosmic principles that connected their works to the eternal dance of celestial bodies. The monuments they left behind continue to whisper their secrets to those willing to listen, beyond the constraints of conventional interpretation and institutional gatekeeping. In the remote corners of the Amazon, in the windswept heights of the Andes, in the arid expanses of the Atacama, their legacy endures in stone testimonies that refuse to conform to established timelines or capability assessments imposed by those who prefer comfortable myths to uncomfortable truths about our mysterious prehistoric past. The systematic suppression of evidence supporting these alternative interpretations speaks not to absence of proof, but to the presence of forces that work tirelessly to maintain established narratives, while suppressing discoveries that might fundamentally alter our understanding of human development and the extraordinary beings who may have shared this continent with our ancestors. Yet the stones themselves cannot be silenced, cannot be explained away through conventional archaeological methodologies that prioritize maintaining theoretical consistency over honest investigation of anomalous evidence. Their silence is not empty, but pregnant with possibilities that challenge every assumption we hold about prehistoric capabilities and the beings who possess them. In the spaces between official history and suppressed evidence, between documented discoveries and their systematic erasure, lies a truth that demands recognition, despite institutional resistance and professional intimidation, designed to maintain intellectual conformity at the expense of genuine understanding. The mystery of South America's megalithic giants remains unresolved, not because evidence is lacking, but because acknowledging their existence would require fundamental revisions to cherished beliefs about human uniqueness, technological progress, and cultural development that form the foundation of our modern worldview, and the institutions that profit from maintaining these limiting perspectives on our extraordinary prehistoric heritage. The great silence that shrouds the Antarctic ice sheet holds more than frozen water and ancient air bubbles trapped in crystalline prisons. Beneath miles of accumulated snow and ice lie landscapes that have remained hidden from human eyes for millions of years. Yet satellite-penetrating radar has begun to reveal geometric anomalies that challenge everything we understand about the frozen continent's prehistory. Deep beneath the ice, structures emerge in sonar imaging that display the unmistakable characteristics of artificial construction, their proportions suggesting builders of extraordinary scale working in an environment that predates the formation of the current ice sheet by eons. The Piri Reis map of 1513, drawn by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer, depicts the Antarctic coastline with startling accuracy, despite being created 3 centuries before the continent's official discovery. Most remarkably, the map shows Antarctica without its ice covering, revealing geographical features that match modern satellite surveys of the bedrock beneath the frozen surface. The precision of these details suggests access to source materials that documented the continent during a period when it was free of ice, a time when beings of sufficient capability might have established settlements in regions now buried beneath miles of frozen water. Recent deep ice core samples extracted from various Antarctic locations have yielded organic materials and mineral compositions that suggest the presence of large-scale construction activities in the continent's distant past. The isotopic signatures found in these samples indicate the movement and processing of massive quantities of stone and metal, activities that would require both advanced extraction techniques and the physical strength to manipulate materials on scales that dwarf modern industrial operations. The age of these deposits places the construction activities at periods when conventional archaeology insists no advanced civilizations existed anywhere on Earth. The discovery of perfectly preserved megalithic structures beneath the Greenland ice sheet has provided additional evidence of prehistoric construction capabilities in polar regions. These formations, revealed through ground-penetrating radar and confirmed by limited drilling operations, display the same precision fitting and astronomical alignments found at megalithic sites worldwide. The structures appear to have been built during ice-free periods and subsequently covered by advancing glaciers, preserving them in pristine condition for thousands of years. Inuit legends from across the Arctic region speak consistently of the Tornasuk, giant beings who possess the strength to reshape entire landscapes and the knowledge to predict the movements of ice and sea across vast periods of time. These traditions describe the giants as master builders who constructed elaborate settlements in the high Arctic during periods when the climate was warmer and the land was free of permanent ice coverage. The legends include specific details about construction techniques that seem impossible for normal-sized beings working in harsh polar environments. The technical specifications preserved in these Arctic oral traditions align remarkably with the physical evidence emerging from beneath the ice sheets. Stories describing the use of harmonic frequencies to cut and shape stone correspond with acoustic analysis of the discovered structures, which display resonant properties that suggest deliberate acoustic engineering. The giants are described as possessing voices capable of generating sounds that could fracture stone along predetermined lines, creating building blocks with precision that rivals modern laser cutting techniques. The systematic classification of polar archaeological discoveries has followed patterns established in other regions, where evidence supporting giant builder theories faces immediate suppression or denial. Research expeditions that encounter anomalous structures or artifacts in Arctic and Antarctic regions often find their findings classified under national security protocols that prevent publication or independent verification of their discoveries. The strategic importance of polar regions for military and resource extraction operations provides convenient justification for restricting access to sites that might yield evidence challenging established historical narratives. The role of climate change in revealing previously hidden archaeological evidence has created new opportunities for discovery, while simultaneously threatening the preservation of sites that have remained frozen for millennia. As ice sheets retreat and permafrost melts, structures and artifacts of unprecedented scale and sophistication emerge from their frozen preservation, only to face rapid deterioration when exposed to modern atmospheric conditions. The race to document these discoveries before they degrade creates pressures that often result in hasty excavations and incomplete scientific analysis. International treaties governing Antarctic research have established protocols that effectively control which discoveries receive serious investigation and which are quietly suppressed or ignored. The Antarctic Treaty System, while nominally designed to promote peaceful scientific cooperation, includes provisions that allow participating nations to classify certain discoveries as matters of national interest, effectively removing them from international scientific scrutiny. This framework has been used repeatedly to suppress evidence of anomalous archaeological finds that might challenge established interpretations of human prehistory. The scale of construction activities, suggested by satellite imagery of subglacial Antarctic structures, implies the movement and placement of millions of tons of stone and other materials across vast distances in one of Earth's most challenging environments. The logistics required for such undertakings would exceed the capabilities of any known prehistoric civilization, suggesting builders who possessed both extraordinary physical strength and advanced understanding of engineering principles capable of functioning in extreme cold conditions. The mineral composition analysis of materials found at polar megalithic sites reveals the use of stone types and metal alloys that do not occur naturally in polar regions, indicating transportation networks that spanned thousands of miles and encompassed multiple continents. The precision with which these exotic materials were incorporated into construction projects suggests not only advanced logistics capabilities, but also sophisticated understanding of how different materials would perform under extreme temperature variations and seismic stresses common in polar regions. The astronomical alignments embedded within polar megalithic structures demonstrate knowledge of celestial mechanics that accounts for the unique characteristics of polar skies, where conventional stellar navigation techniques become ineffective due to the extreme axial tilt effects at high latitudes. The calculations required to create accurate astronomical alignments in polar regions demand both advanced mathematical skills and intimate familiarity with stellar movements across extended time periods, suggesting builders who possessed either extraordinary lifespans or institutional knowledge preservation systems that far exceeded normal human capabilities. The acoustic properties of polar megalithic structures reveal engineering principles specifically adapted to Arctic conditions, where sound travels differently due to atmospheric density variations and temperature extremes. The chambers and passages within these constructions are tuned to specific frequencies that account for polar atmospheric conditions, creating acoustic environments that would enhance communication and potentially facilitate the kind of sound-based construction techniques described in indigenous legends about giant builders. The systematic removal of polar archaeological evidence follows established patterns of institutional suppression that prioritize maintaining conventional historical narratives over investigating discoveries that might fundamentally challenge our understanding of prehistoric human capabilities. Specimens and artifacts that clearly indicate the presence of beings possessing extraordinary physical capabilities are routinely classified, relocated to secure facilities, or simply denied to exist, despite extensive photographic and measurement documentation by field researchers. The psychological resistance to acknowledging evidence of polar giants reflects broader cultural biases that associate harsh environments with primitive conditions and limited capabilities, making it difficult for mainstream institutions to accept that some of humanity's most sophisticated prehistoric achievements might have occurred in regions now considered uninhabitable. The possibility that polar regions once hosted advanced civilizations possessing capabilities that exceed modern achievements challenges fundamental assumptions about the relationship between environment and technological development. The emerging evidence from polar regions suggests a global network of megalithic construction that encompassed even the most remote and challenging environments on Earth, implying builders whose capabilities transcended normal human limitations in ways that enabled them to work effectively across all climate zones and geographical conditions. The consistency of construction techniques and astronomical alignments between polar sites and those in temperate regions indicates either remarkable cultural continuity or shared access to knowledge sources that provided universal principles for megalithic construction, regardless of environmental conditions. The indigenous knowledge systems of Arctic peoples preserve detailed information about polar giants that include specific technical details about their construction methods, social organization, and eventual disappearance from the polar regions. These oral traditions describe sophisticated ice-working techniques that enabled the giants to create permanent structures in frozen environments, using principles of thermodynamics and structural engineering that seem impossible for prehistoric civilizations working without advanced metallurgy and precision tools. The implications of acknowledging polar giants extend beyond simple archaeological revision to encompass fundamental questions about human adaptation, technological development, and the true scope of prehistoric achievement in environments that challenge the survival capabilities of modern humans, even with advanced equipment and support systems. The possibility that beings of extraordinary capabilities once thrived in polar conditions, that modern civilization finds nearly uninhabitable, suggests either remarkable environmental adaptation or access to technologies that enabled comfortable habitation in extreme conditions. The systematic suppression of polar giant evidence reflects institutional investments in maintaining narratives that support current geopolitical arrangements and resource extraction rights, based on assumptions about the historical uninhabitability and underdevelopment of polar regions. Acknowledging sophisticated prehistoric civilizations in Arctic and Antarctic regions would complicate territorial claims and resource rights that depend on characterizing these areas as pristine wilderness, unmarked by significant human presence or development. The digital preservation of polar archaeological evidence has become increasingly important, As physical access to discovery sites becomes more restricted through environmental protection measures and international treaty obligations that effectively prevent independent investigation of locations that might yield evidence supporting alternative interpretations of polar prehistory. Satellite imagery and remote sensing technologies provide the only remaining means for documenting many polar megalithic sites before they are either destroyed by climate change or made permanently inaccessible through political restrictions. The convergence of evidence from polar regions with similar discoveries worldwide creates a compelling case for reconsidering fundamental assumptions about prehistoric human capabilities and the beings who may have shared our world during earlier epochs of Earth's history. The harsh conditions that make polar construction seem impossible for normal-sized humans would present manageable challenges for beings possessing the strength, endurance, and knowledge described in global traditions about ancient giants who shaped landscapes according to visions that encompassed both practical engineering and profound understanding of cosmic principles. As consciousness fades into the realm of dreams, let your imagination drift across vast polar landscapes where evidence of ancient giants lies preserved beneath miles of ice that have protected their secrets for millennia beyond human memory. Picture beings of extraordinary stature working with confident precision in environments that challenge modern survival capabilities, their constructions designed not merely for immediate habitation, but for preservation across geological ages that would outlast the climatic changes they somehow knew were coming. The ice itself becomes a testament to their foresight, a crystalline archive that has maintained their monuments in perfect condition, while surface civilizations rose and fell in cycles of achievement and forgetting. And, in the polar silence that surrounds these frozen mysteries, lies a truth about prehistoric capabilities that challenges every assumption we hold about human adaptation, technological development, and the extraordinary beings who once walked among our ancestors across landscapes we now consider uninhabitable. The systematic suppression of this polar evidence speaks not to its absence, but to the presence of forces that recognize the revolutionary implications of acknowledging civilizations whose achievements in the world's harshest environments would fundamentally alter our understanding of what was possible in ages past. Yet the ice preserves what human institutions would prefer to forget, holding in frozen suspension the legacy of giants whose very existence threatens comfortable myths about human uniqueness and the linear progression of technological achievement. Their monuments wait beneath the polar ice like seeds of truth planted in frozen ground, ready to emerge as the ice retreats to challenge our most cherished assumptions about prehistory and the beings whose extraordinary capabilities enabled them to thrive and build in conditions that humble our modern civilization despite all its technological sophistication and industrial might. The forgotten valleys of Tibet hold secrets that make the monastery walls tremble with whispered warnings passed down through generations of silent monks. Here, at altitudes where the air grows thin and modern machinery struggles to function, ancient stone platforms emerge from the snow like altars to forgotten gods. These megalithic terraces, carved directly into the living rock of the Himalayas, display a precision that defies explanation when considered within the context of Bronze Age Tibet, where yak herders supposedly scratched out subsistence livings on barren mountainsides. The blocks that form these high-altitude monuments weigh upward of 60 tons each, their surfaces polished to a mirror finish, despite being composed of granite so hard that modern diamond-tipped tools wear down rapidly when attempting to achieve similar results. The transportation of such massive stones up mountain slopes that challenge contemporary heavy machinery presents logistical impossibilities that conventional archaeology simply ignores rather than attempts to explain. Local Tibetan traditions, however, offer a different perspective on these achievements, speaking of the Miche Chempo, enormous beings whose footsteps could be traced in the very bedrock of the mountain peaks. These oral histories describe construction techniques that seem to blend advanced engineering with capabilities that transcend normal physical limitations. The giants are said to have possessed the ability to communicate across vast mountain distances through methods that involved more than spoken language. coordinating massive construction projects that spanned entire mountain ranges through systems of acoustic signaling that utilize the natural resonance properties of the thin, high-altitude atmosphere. The acoustic analysis of these Tibetan megalithic sites has revealed engineering principles that seem specifically designed to exploit the unique sound transmission characteristics found at extreme altitudes. The stone platforms create resonance chambers that amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, producing effects that would be impossible to achieve without intimate understanding of how sound behaves in rarefied atmospheric conditions. These acoustic properties align perfectly with traditional accounts describing giants whose powerful voices could carry instructions across valleys and peaks, enabling coordination of construction activities across distances that would make normal human communication impossible. Moving westward across the roof of the world, the mysterious stone circles of Afghanistan's remote mountain regions present another chapter in this global anthology of impossible prehistoric achievements. Hidden in valleys so remote that few outsiders have ever reached them, these megalithic complexes display construction techniques that rival the finest examples found anywhere on Earth. The stones, some weighing over 80 tons, are fitted together with joints so precise that the seasonal temperature variations that crack most mountain stonework have had no effect on these structures across thousands of years of exposure to some of the world's harshest environmental conditions. Local Hazara and Tajik peoples preserve detailed oral traditions about these monuments' origins, describing them as the work of the Divisepid, white giants who possessed both tremendous physical strength and profound knowledge of mountain engineering. These legends include specific technical details about construction methods that seem impossible for normal-sized beings working in environments where oxygen deprivation affects human performance significantly. The stories describe techniques for moving massive stones across treacherous mountain terrain, using principles of leverage and counterweight that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of physics and mechanics applied on scales that dwarf most modern construction projects. The precision displayed in these Afghan megalithic sites becomes even more remarkable when considered within the context of the region's extreme seismic activity. Built in zones subject to regular earthquakes that have leveled modern cities, these ancient structures incorporate flexible jointing systems that allow for movement during seismic events without compromising structural integrity. This sophisticated approach to earthquake-resistant construction suggests builders who possessed extensive practical experience with seismic engineering, knowledge that typically develops through centuries of trial and error, yet appears fully formed in the earliest Afghan megalithic sites. The systematic suppression of Afghan archaeological evidence has followed patterns that reflect the region's strategic importance for military and resource extraction operations. International conflicts have provided convenient justification for restricting access to sites that might yield evidence challenging established historical narratives, while the classification of certain discoveries as matters of national security has prevented independent investigation of findings that could revolutionize our understanding of Central Asian prehistory. The discovery of oversized artifacts in Afghan mountain caves has been documented by various military and intelligence personnel who encountered these materials during operations in remote regions, yet their reports have been systematically classified or dismissed despite the potential archaeological significance of their findings. Former special operations personnel have described privately encountering skeletal remains and tools scaled for use by individuals of extraordinary stature, yet attempts to bring these discoveries to scientific attention have been met with official denials and career-threatening pressures to maintain silence about such encounters. The role of opium production in Afghanistan has inadvertently contributed to archaeological discoveries, as cultivation activities in remote mountain valleys have uncovered megalithic sites and artifact caches that had remained hidden for millennia. However, the illegal nature of these activities, combined with the region's political instability, has prevented systematic investigation of these discoveries, while the involvement of various international agencies in counter-narcotics operations has provided additional mechanisms for suppressing evidence that might challenge established interpretations of Afghan prehistory. The linguistic analysis of terms used across Central Asian languages to describe prehistoric giants reveals consistent patterns that suggest shared historical experiences rather than purely mythological constructs. Root words emphasizing the giants' roles as teachers and builders appear in languages separated by vast distances and historical periods, indicating either remarkable cultural diffusion or common source experiences involving actual encounters with beings possessing the described capabilities. The astronomical alignments embedded within Central Asian megalithic sites demonstrate mathematical sophistication that challenges conventional assumptions about prehistoric nomadic cultures. The calculations required to track complex celestial cycles across the unique atmospheric conditions found at extreme altitudes demand both advanced theoretical knowledge and practical experience with high-altitude astronomical observation that seems impossible for the pastoral societies supposedly inhabiting these regions during the proposed construction periods. The engineering principles displayed at these mountain sites reveal understanding of structural mechanics that seems impossible for civilizations supposedly working with primitive tools, in environments where basic survival presents constant challenges. The use of advanced counterbalancing techniques, the integration of thermal expansion compensation, and the precise distribution of load forces all demonstrate knowledge that typically develops through extensive practical experience with large-scale construction in extreme conditions. The mineral composition analysis of stones used in Central Asian megalithic construction reveals the incorporation of materials that do not occur naturally in the construction regions, indicating transportation networks that spanned thousands of miles across some of the world's most challenging terrain. The precision with which these exotic materials were integrated into construction projects suggests not only advanced logistics capabilities, but also sophisticated understanding of how different stone types would perform under extreme temperature variations and seismic stresses common in mountain environments. The systematic dating of Central Asian megalithic sites continues to push back the timeline for advanced construction capabilities in the region, with some structures showing evidence of construction periods that predate established chronologies for complex civilization in Central Asia by thousands of years. These findings challenge fundamental assumptions about nomadic culture development and technological capabilities that form the foundation of current archaeological interpretation of the region's prehistory. The suppression of radiocarbon dating results that contradict established timelines has become a recurring pattern in Central Asian archaeology, with laboratories reporting pressure to modify or suppress results that might challenge conventional chronologies. This creates artificial constraints on archaeological interpretation that prevent serious consideration of evidence suggesting much earlier development of advanced construction capabilities in regions that mainstream archaeology characterizes as perpetually primitive and underdeveloped. The role of international mining and resource extraction operations in uncovering and subsequently suppressing giant-related discoveries throughout Central Asia follows established patterns where commercial interests take precedence over archaeological investigation. Large-scale extraction operations frequently encounter unusual skeletal remains and oversized artifacts during their excavations. Yet these discoveries rarely receive serious scientific attention before being removed through corporate security protocols that prioritize operational secrecy over academic inquiry. The emerging evidence from Central Asian mountain regions suggests participation in a global network of megalithic construction that encompassed even the most remote and challenging environments on Earth, implying builders whose capabilities transcended normal human limitations in ways that enabled them to work effectively across all geographical conditions and altitude ranges. The consistency of construction techniques and astronomical alignments between high-altitude sites and those in other regions indicates either remarkable cultural continuity or shared access to knowledge sources that provided universal principles for megalithic construction regardless of environmental challenges. The indigenous knowledge systems of Central Asian peoples preserve detailed information about mountain giants that includes specific technical details about their construction methods, social organization, and gradual withdrawal from human contact as climatic conditions became less favorable for their activities. These oral traditions describe sophisticated stoneworking techniques that enabled the giants to create permanent structures in extreme mountain environments, using principles of thermal dynamics and structural engineering that seem impossible for prehistoric civilizations, working without advanced metallurgy and precision tools. The implications of acknowledging Central Asian giants extend beyond archaeological revision to encompass fundamental questions about human adaptation to extreme environments and the true scope of prehistoric achievement in regions that challenge modern survival capabilities even with advanced equipment and logistical support. The possibility that beings of extraordinary capabilities once thrived in mountain conditions that modern civilization finds barely habitable suggests either remarkable environmental adaptation or access to technologies that enabled comfortable habitation in extreme altitude conditions. The systematic suppression of Central Asian giant evidence reflects institutional investments in maintaining narratives that characterize mountain regions as perpetually primitive and underdeveloped, supporting geopolitical arrangements and resource extraction rights based on assumptions about the historical inability of indigenous populations to achieve significant technological or architectural accomplishments. Acknowledging sophisticated prehistoric civilizations in these regions would complicate territorial claims and cultural hierarchies that depend on characterizing mountain peoples as inherently less capable than lowland civilizations. The converged support for reconsidering fundamental assumptions about prehistoricence of evidence from Central Asian mountain regions, with similar discoveries worldwide, creates compelling human capabilities and the beings who may have possessed knowledge and physical abilities that far exceeded normal human parameters. The harsh conditions that make high-altitude construction seem impossible for normal-sized humans would present manageable challenges for beings possessing the strength, endurance, and specialized knowledge described in global traditions about ancient giants who reshaped landscapes according to visions that encompassed both practical engineering and profound understanding of environmental adaptation principles. As your consciousness drifts towards sleep, imagine vast mountain landscapes where beings of extraordinary stature once moved with purpose across peaks that touch the sky. Their constructions designed not merely for immediate use, but for preservation across climatic ages that would test the endurance of any structure built by normal human hands. The thin air that challenges modern climbers posed no obstacle to these ancient architects, whose lung capacity and physical strength enabled them to work comfortably at altitudes where contemporary humans struggle to maintain consciousness without artificial assistance. The systematic suppression of this mountain evidence speaks not to its absence, but to the recognition that acknowledging civilizations whose achievements in the world's most challenging environments would fundamentally alter our understanding of prehistoric capabilities and the extraordinary beings whose very existence threatens comfortable assumptions about human limitations and environmental determinism. Yet the stones themselves remain as eternal witnesses, positioned with precision that defies every explanation except the involvement of builders whose capabilities transcended normal human parameters in ways that enabled them to accomplish the seemingly impossible across landscapes that humble our modern technological achievements. As the ancient winds carry whispers across megalithic sites worldwide, from Baalbek's impossible stones to Easter Island's towering moai, from Pumapunku's precision cuts to the Himalayas' mountain terraces, we find ourselves confronting a truth that challenges everything we've been taught about our past. The evidence stands before us, carved in stone too massive for human hands, fitted with precision that defies Bronze Age tools, aligned with astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric minds. The systematic suppression of giant discoveries, the vanishing of skeletal remains from museum collections, the deliberate erasure of newspaper accounts that once celebrated these finds, all point to forces that prefer comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. Yet the monuments themselves cannot be silenced, cannot be explained away by conventional archaeology that insists on primitive explanations for achievements that surpass our modern capabilities. Perhaps the most profound realization is that we may not be the pinnacle of human development, but rather inheritors of fragments from a forgotten golden age, when beings of extraordinary stature walked among our ancestors as teachers, builders, and guardians of knowledge. Their legacy endures not in textbooks or museum displays, but in the impossible stones that refuse to conform to established timelines, in the legends that persist despite academic dismissal, in the questions that haunt every honest examination.